Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, we invite you to listen to part 8 of the series. Chapter 65, Vincent. How integral were chips in the daily life of a modern-day human? Even as they slept, these silent workers played their role. They observed the time, measured the surrounding temperature and were on the lookout for any toxicants in the air. When a person woke up, he interacted with dozens of different processors in a short succession. His power shower automatically cleaned him with the most optimal settings before drying him off without any excess heat and air. If he was fairly well off, then his household bot would have already prepared a sumptuous breakfast for him. Though the act of automated cooking was long perfected, bots still needed a tiny bit of processing power to adapt to different ingredients. When it was time for him to go to work, he entered his aircar if he owned one or hailed one from the streets. These basic vehicles were packed with processors of different kinds. The most high-end one was in charge of the main functions, but plenty of auxiliary modules required less calculating power. The projectors that let the person read his news or check out the latest weather were all guided by humble processors solely developed for this role. Just this tiny slice of life of an average person showed how ubiquitous computers were in this day and age. As the dominant manufacturer of competitively priced computer chips, the Ricklin Corporation should be swimming in money. In fact, it did. When Vincent last glanced at the company's accounting sheets, his eyes grew cross-eyed at how many trillion credits the company raked in each fiscal year. Unfortunately, no one in the Ricklin family was glad with the company's current trend. Revenue was high, but so were the expenses. To produce that many chips at the lowest possible price, the Ricklin Corporation constantly invested in its mass production capabilities. But that wasn't enough. The company had to constantly look forward and develop faster processors. Its highly substantial R&D winking and laughing department always licensed newer technologies from more advanced states at practically extortionary prices and spent years trying to adapt them in a cheaper form. By the time these chips finally entered the market, the Ricklin Corporation incurred tens of billions of credits in debt. The company is like a hamster stuck in a wheel. No matter how far it tries to go, it always ends up at the same spot. Vincent muttered as he lounged in his recreation room. The day of the delivery was soon upon him. The new mech that he custom-ordered from some no-name kid had passed the MTA certification process with flying colors. Vincent never thought he'd get his new mech so smoothly. He underestimated VES. "Tell me again why I have to resort to this older model?" he absently asked as he twirled his unruly blonde hair. Despite its messy appearance, a real human stylist had personally worked on it this morning. While bots delivered consistent performance, real human workers always possessed a spark of creativity that artificial computers lacked. Johnson, his personal assistant and butler, as Vincent preferred to say, calmly stated his own opinions. "Young master, choosing to purchase a more modern mech will alarm your siblings and cause them to raise their vigilance against you. By purchasing a mech based off technology from the last generation, you've successfully caused everyone keeping an eye on you to disregard your intentions. I take it no one inside and out is aware of my real intentions. As soon as they heard that you added a codpiece to your mech, they all stopped paying attention." Vincent smirked as his eyes sparked with indolent patience. While the rich scion still looked like a playboy, there was an edge to his personality which he did not display before around anyone else. Even VES was successfully convinced his client had no redeeming features. "My granddad and those old coots in the board of management will soon rue the day they pushed me out of my inheritance." For the oldest son of a large, traditional family to be pushed aside, Vincent was humiliated beyond words. A family that passed down its leadership position from eldest to eldest since the start of Bentheim's colonization suddenly changed all rules to suit the third and youngest direct descendant. Vincent gritted his teeth and squeezed his fist. That hateful Caitlin. Why was she born with all those gifts? From the very moment of conception, things started to change. Vincent was afforded any and every luxury, so long as he listened diligently to his instructors. The amount of schoolwork he needed to memorize each day could astound any other person, but to Vincent, who had crammed entire literary works since young, it was like drinking water. The Ricklin family hid a dark secret. They engaged in extensive genetic modification to design the perfect descendant. Though it was an open secret that every affluent family engaged in the practice, the Ricklin family went a step further. By chance, one of the ancestors of the family came across a large wreck when she accompanied a priority trade shipment. The already old woman at that time only ordered the convoy to stop and inspect the wreckage for survivors. She never intended to stay and dig up what had happened because the shipment was time-sensitive. Nevertheless, the ruined ship's origins turned out to be extremely remarkable. Through some freak accident involving extensive battle damage and an overstressed FTL drive, the ship suffered catastrophic damage during FTL and ended up well inside a star system's gravity well. There was no surviving such a process. All life in the ship perished without even having enough time to scream, and most of the interior of the mech got crushed. However, some smaller and more protected systems survived, enough for the ancestor to learn what a bounty the ship represented. It turned out the ship was piloted by an exiled family line from the new Rubarth Empire. At its height, this Rubarthan lineage ruled over 3 ports and 39 lesser star systems. Unfortunately, they somehow crossed the Emperor and lost all of their territory in one go when the Rubarthans caught them off guard with a mass invasion. The disarrayed family barely had time to pack up their essentials and escape with their fastest starships. The wreck the ancient Ricklin Elder found was one of them, and like many other escape vessels from a first-rate superstate, it possessed many redundancies. While the botched FTL transition killed off all of the occupants, its data core was still intact, though its encryption was not a trivial matter. When the Elder sneakily ordered the data core to be brought back, she redirected the floating wreck and sent it directly towards the system's sun. She wanted no trace of its existence left. Years and eventually decades passed by while the family slowly worked on the data core's encryption. An entire generation of family heads retired their places to allow the younger generation to take the helm. The Ricklins eventually decoded the data core, but not through any exceptional effort on their part. They simply waited for the most appropriate cracking technology to advance. No encryption could ever last the test of time. When the Ricklins finally accessed the data core, they found out it possessed data on only one topic: genetic manipulation. And not the regular kind. No, it turned out the Rubarthans were not content with the human genome alone. They very subtly incorporated DNA adapted from alien samples. As one could imagine, this was not a simple process. The genetic code that originated from alien lifeforms always came in different formats. It took an immense amount of effort to read, analyze, and adapt an alien's best attribute to a form compatible to human life. It sounded crazy and heretical, but the Rubarthan family who funded these studies actually succeeded in incorporating such alien genes in their own test subjects. Just as they were about to extend their experiments to their own crop of descendants, the Rubarthan Emperor came in to destroy them. At hand. Perhaps the research was the principal reason why the family's fortunes turned so suddenly. In any case, long story short, the Ricklins were barely able to interpret the research results, much less replicate them even in the most advanced biolabs. Only in recent years did they achieve a limited result. Just when Vincent started his schooling, in fact. Caitlin was the most successful clone out of thousands. Through some confluence of random factors, her gene expression sat in the sweet spot where it activated all of the good things about the alien genes while the side effects were minimized. Whereas most of her sibling clones were stillborn or grew deformed, Caitlin quietly grew up to be a model baby. Vincent's parents practically ignored their 2 naturally born sons and latched onto this aberrant new sister. Though the Ricklins never understood precisely what the alien genes did, Caitlin always distinguished herself in many remarkable ways since young. No matter if it was intelligence, ingenuity, or deductive capability, Caitlin beat every record imaginable. The family's orientation changed directions. After the devastating losses the Ricklin Corporation incurred during the last war between the Vija Kingdom and the Bright Republic, the family desperately needed hope. Caitlin represented their best chance at revival. No one cared about Vincent or his average second brother Gilbert anymore. Gilbert could get away from any entangling conflicts by taking the opportunity to study at a prestigious institution in a second-rate state. Though he promised he'd be back once he graduated, he never really sent any word back all these years, and no one in the family cared. As the eldest son, Vincent was stuck in a more awkward position. He could never find any justification to flee the confines of his family's influence. Even leaving the surface of Bentheim was out of the question. He had to give ground in a different way. His personal assistant, loyal only to him, came up with an elegant solution. With Johnson's assistance, he slowly cultivated a playboy lifestyle to the point he could not really distinguish between his roles anymore. So good was his acting that the family heads were all convinced he grew up to be a piece of trash. With all the myriad scandals popping up in the news, they had the perfect excuse to dispossess him from his inheritance and pass it over to their talented wonder girl. Naturally, Vincent was no fool, and some of the more acute elders weren't either. As he took the initiative to retreat from his cherished position, the older generation didn't make it too difficult for him. Naturally, everyone except for him saved their faces. "Well, it won't be long before I can get back at Caitlin and the rest." Vincent smirked as he was at the cusp of enacting the plan he brewed for years. "Your new mech has arrived in the courtyard," Johnson informed him after a few minutes passed. "Shall we meet with Mrs. Bollinger?" "Yes, let's finalize this transaction." When Vincent and Johnson stepped out of the doors of the opulent mansion, they resumed their typical appearances. Vincent stumbled forward like he had not yet recovered from a wild night of partying, while Johnson acted as the dutiful servant who ignored everything that did not concern his young master's immediate needs. As a veteran businesswoman, Marcella hid her scorn well. She was all smiles as she firmly gripped Vincent's hand, even if he needed some help with that from his butler. "Good morning, Vincent. It's a great day today, is it?" "You betcha. My long-awaited pimp mobile has finally arrived. I can't wait to see it in the flesh." Before they could approach the sealed container, the mansion's security personnel went to work. They inspected the container and its contents very thoroughly. After finding nothing amiss, they opened the shell and revealed the imposing form of a newly built medium mech. "He's beautiful. Such a grand mech deserves to be worshipped," Vincent muttered as he truly grew in love with his latest purchase. "That Larkinson kid deserves a medal. I doubt anyone could have built any cooler mech." Not everyone present admired the mech. The added frills were senseless and distracted the mech from its core purpose. The unavoidable codpiece jarred everyone's sense of how mechs ought to look like. Its presence was like a shining elephant in the room. No one had ever seen such a thing before in a modern mech. It led to many questioning gazes. Vincent ignored all of the stares and beelined his way to the mech. An advanced hoverbot with zillions of safety features already waited for him near the feet of the mech. As he climbed in the air, he passed by the codpiece. The thick, stubby triangular piece of decoration was larger than his body. Proportionally, it looked hefty on the modified Mark Antony's frame, but it did not exaggerate its prowess too much. "It sure is big enough." Vincent nodded in satisfaction as he finally reached the open cockpit. He scampered inside, and with familiar motions he strapped himself in. As he stared ahead, he spotted a shining blue crystal-like gem. As he caressed his finger over its surface, he pressed it in, causing the cockpit to close and the mech come to life. Though it was safer to let a trained pilot under his employ test out the mech, Vincent wanted to do it personally. This was going to be his personal mech, and only he should have the right to pilot it. Using a mech after someone else had piloted it first felt too much like using a second-hand good. As a veritable spendthrift elite, he disdained such matters. The neural interface connected to his brains. His mind was subjected to a myriad of foreign sensations as Vincent allowed the device to connect his brains to the various functions of his new mech. The connection settled down after a minute as all the first-time testing was complete. "I have control over the mech." Stepping out. The Mark Antony model stepped out of the container and into the open air. Vincent admired the heightened perspective of his new body. Despite his acting, he did not hate piloting mechs. In fact, he adored it. Ordering a custom-built mech that looked good merely provided him a convenient excuse for any future circumstances. He could simply say that all the other mechs were too ugly. As everyone else stepped back in case Vincent lost control, which they thought was likely, the Mark Antony began to exercise its range of motion. The mech performed its actions with smooth motions. After the mech picked up its accompanying mace and shield, it made some rudimentary attack patterns. Nothing malfunctioned. After half an hour of running around and testing each weapons at the practice range for the guards, Vincent finally hopped out of the cockpit with a satisfied expression. He met Marcella and signed the final contracts. "And that's all of it," Marcella said with a smile as she instructed her employees to process the newly signed contracts back in her office. "If I may say, it was a wise choice to buy from Mr. Larkinson. The man is young, but he possesses integrity most other Bentheimer's have in short supply. If you wish to purchase another mech to fill up your stables, feel free to call me up. Vincent laughed awkwardly. I've scratched my itch for a good-looking mech. I don't expect to buy another machine, for now. One mech was enough for his plan to come into fruition, Vincent thought to himself. Still, on the outside he acted all smiles as he made a few crass jokes. Marcella hardly appreciated them and disentangled herself from the conversation as fast as possible while still remaining polite. As a guard led the broker back to the front gates, Vincent and Johnson stared up at the new mech. It's going to be dangerous from here on out. The storm you will spark will engulf the entire republic. Johnson cautioned his employer again, now that they were about to take more substantial risks. It doesn't matter how many trees will get knocked over. As long as mine is still standing at the end of it, all of my actions aren't in vain. Chapter 66, Novice. An anxious VS impatiently waited for the news to arrive. After more than a day of biting his fingernails, his comm lighted up with a series of incoming messages. The first one came from his bank. Marcella passed on the rest of Vincent's payment for his new mech. His eyes almost popped when he saw how much the young Ricklin paid for his customized combat machine. 34 million credits. That's at 6 million more than the regular price. For just a couple of days' work, an extra 6 million credits in his pocket was an extremely generous payment. Vincent got badly ripped off by Marcella. Out of the 34 million credits, Marcella sliced 3.4 million credits as her share, leaving him with a remaining profit of 12.8 million credits, which was still a pretty huge amount. As VES still enjoyed about 1.5 million credits of pocket money, he stashed all of his new gains in his piggy bank. His savings account now swelled to 24 million bright credits. His dream of replacing his second-hand equipment and acquiring some good licenses was one step closer. And that's not all. The real reward has yet to come. He opened the subsequent messages sent by the silent but ever-present system. You have received 34 design points for selling a physical mech of your design. The small amount of credits he received for a single sale failed to sate his appetite. He skipped right to the other message. Congratulations for partially completing the mission. As a mech designer, you must learn to accommodate the needs of your clients and do your best to incorporate his wishes in your creation. A lack of ability is no excuse. VES was afraid of this. He only earned a partial completion for the mission due to screwing up the simple lighting design. He should have contracted an artist himself instead of letting Vincent do all of the work. For satisfying 2 out of 3 of your clients' requests, you have received a deluxe concentration candy and 2,000 design points. Yes. Haha, I still got the candy. VES celebrated with glee. He expected his DP reward to be cut, but keeping the candy worth 0.5 attribute points intact was a pleasant surprise. Only, why is it for concentration? Certainly, VES did not disregard the concentration attribute. It allowed him to work long stretches of time while holding on to the same intent. If his attention span was too short, he'd easily be distracted and lose the perfect state to harmonize the X factor of a new design. Concentration also affected many other processes in a positive way. Still, these improvements weren't able to provide concrete results. X factor was always nebulous at the best of times, and VES did not expect his efforts in this area to improve very quickly. The lack of direction plagued him for a long time, though his latest work for Vincent taught him that perhaps it might be wise to reconsider gender for mechs. Man, if I had gotten intelligence instead, my learning capacity would have jumped through the roof. A man could wish. If necessary, he could buy the candy from the store, though the prices the heartless system charged were sky high. He'd rather invest in his skills than raising his attributes. This spending strategy provided the best results in the short and medium term. Bottoms up. He gulped down the candy in a single toss. The candy tasted sour, and it spread to his entire mouth. Then everything in his mouth started to burn a bit, causing VES to fall and hold his head. Somehow the sour taste drilled through his flesh and converged on his brain. The pain became excruciating. Lucky even turned alarmed and meowed in panic at the sight. Only after several minutes did the entire process end. VES took deep breaths as he tried to recover from the strange ordeal the system put him in. He was going to have to be more careful eating these strengthened candies next time. He flexed his mind a little, but did not see any obvious results from the 0.5-point bump in concentration. He shrugged. It might take a more concerted action to feel the effects. Since it was a long time since he last inspected his status, he called it up to plan his next actions. Design points, 2136. Concentration, 1.7. Mechanics, apprentice, jury rigging 2, speed tuning 2. Evaluation, a stalled mech designer languishing at the entry gates. Even the system thought he was stagnant for too long. His skills and attributes had rarely moved forward even after several weeks. His virtual designs in Iron Spirit barely earned him any DP even with the lowest possible prices set on them. Only the occasional 5-star mech sale bumped up his DP significantly. Now that I have a windfall of more than 2000 DP, I should use it to progress my stalling status. The system still considered VES to be a novice mech designer. This term used to be appropriate when he was still a raw newcomer, but with 2 confirmed real mech sales under his belt, it now sounded demeaning. The industry treated novice mech designers rather poorly. Novices always flooded the labor market after they graduated each year. Without any wealth or connections, these naive, hopeful designers usually got a huge shock when they saw that employers almost never hired them to design mech straight away. These novices had nowhere else to go. The big firms all heartlessly exploited them as excellent mech technicians, dangling the possibility of promotion down the line in front of their faces. It would take many decades before they ever got the chance to sit behind the design table. Only after designing a commercial variant off an existing base model and selling it a couple of times did he graduate from that lowly status. The MTA likely updated their files on him to reflect his change of status. In official terms, he graduated from a novice into an apprentice mech designer. Still, the system didn't acknowledge his accomplishments. It paid more emphasis to his capabilities, which did not change significantly since the start. Oh, in absolute terms, he improved in several ways. But his skills still remained within the realm of beginner mech designers. If I want to become an apprentice mech designer, then I have to push up one of my core skills to journeyman level. Right now, VES reached apprentice level in assembly, business, mechanics, and metallurgy. If he wanted to shore up his foundations properly, then he should upgrade his physics to apprentice level as well. The 1000 DP price tag for that action swayed his hand. My ability to design mechs will only improve marginally if I bump up my physics skill. With my DP cut in half, I can't upgrade any other skill to journeyman. That will delay my progress too much. While foundation was important, VES lacked the time to develop all of his skills in an even manner. It's not too bad if I have holes in my knowledge base. I can easily fill them up later. It's more important I find something to excel at quickly. Though VES decided to focus on balancing speed and armor, his all-important physics skills still had ways to go. He focused instead on mechanics and metallurgy. Advancing either of these skills provided him with benefits. Mechanics is the core skill of any mech. A mech is a collection of many moving parts. If I improve this skill, I can make a mech run smoother even if it carries many complex parts. Metallurgy on the other hand acted more nebulous. It increased his knowledge of the property of all kinds of metals, but whether he could apply them was still a question. Though essential in developing or modifying new armor systems, VES had no foundation in this area. He was not planning to develop his own armor systems anytime soon. Thus, the choice was easy. He decisively entered the skill tree and upgraded his mechanics skill. The moment he did so, the system came alive. You have upgraded your mechanics skill to journeyman. Please stand by for high-density knowledge transfer. What is high-density dash? It was as if a rocket blew apart his mind. The mental assault arrived so suddenly that VES instantly blacked out. An unknown amount of time passed by. VES eventually managed to wake up to a worried Lucky bumping its foreleg against his nose. Haha, I'm not a goner yet, little buddy. After reassuring Lucky that he was safe and sound, VES groggily scratched his head and tried to inspect his newly mechanics skill. An ocean of newly acquired knowledge streamed into his consciousness. It was as if wonderful world of applied mechanics had opened its door to him. He learned many scattered tidbits of insights that combined represented a terrifying package that changed the way he saw mechs. I never fully appreciated the alternate forms of mechs. The main benefit of journeyman-level mechanics was that he gained a deeper insight into the workings of non-humanoid mechs. He learned the essentials how animal and bird-shaped mechs took advantage of the properties of their design scheme. It is truly a matter of imitating nature's perfect works. That was not to say that designers specializing in mechanics copied animal shapes blindly. They only chose the most optimal species and further refined the design to accommodate non-native elements such as thrusters or weapon mounts. The things VES gained not only benefited his ability to design animal mechs. Humanoid mechs came in different weight classes and shapes. There was an intricate connection between the two. A designer usually modeled the frames of their original designs after real human athletes. For example, a designer intending to make a new light mech design would hire a runner or a sprinter and model his motions precisely. For heavy mechs, they turned to weightlifters and other strength athletes. Sure, a designer didn't have to reference a real human all the time. But that simply resulted in massive amounts of number crunching as they tried to simulate millions of possible shapes before they finally end up with something satisfactory. Now that he broke the threshold holding him back to novice level, VES was curious if he succeeded in raising his profession. Before he could call his status again, the system interrupted his thoughts. You have met the requirements to promote your profession from novice mech designer to apprentice mech designer. VES cursed out loud. The system refused to give him a promotion. He already imagined the system's next action. You have received a new promotion mission. Please enter the missions page to browse the details. Promotion mission. Mission, acknowledge a master. Prerequisites, promote a main skill to journeyman. No apprentice mech designer has ever reached this level without guidance. A master teaches more than simple theory. He or she also prevents their apprentices from going astray. The guidance of an experienced hand is essential in forming a stellar design philosophy. You must seek out a master mech designer and convince this person to take you in as an apprentice or disciple within a month. Failure condition, fail to apprentice yourself to any master mech designer within 1 month of receiving this mission. You will not be able to promote again for 1 year. Reward, your profession is upgraded to apprentice mech designer, which comes with increased benefits and privileges. An A-rank mission. The system sure didn't make it easy for VES. He hardly had any idea where to start. Does the Bright Republic even host a master mech designer? The question was a valid one, as master mech designers usually enjoyed an eminent status akin to royals. A mere third-rate state such as the Bright Republic or the Vija Kingdom possessed no means to attract and retain a designer of such a caliber. These masters were all capable of designing mechs that could win entire wars. The amount of money they charged for every single design reached a dizzying level. Where can I find a master? The system remained silent even after VES prodded it several times for any suggestions, so he gave up that avenue and turned to the galactic net. He inputted his search term and let the net deliver him a list of nearby masters, at least those that bothered to show themselves in public. As expected, the Bright Republic did not host any masters. 60 years ago was the last time a master mech designer visited the Republic, and that was only to pick up an exceptional genius. None of the other backwater states in the barren Komodo star sector hosted any masters, at least in public. There might be 1 or 2 masters hiding in some corner of the sector, but I have no way of tracking them down. The mission deserved its A-rank rating. The scarcity of master mech designers forced him to cast a wider net. He set his sights on the pair of second-rate states situated in the core of the star sector. They monopolized the region filled with the most vitality. They maintained their power by exploiting the abundant life-giving stars and resources in their borders. Of the 2 local second-rate states, the hexadric hegemony favored the Vija Kingdom. Ruled by a council of 6, they rarely took action, but if they did it was bound to be big. The autocracy was a sleeping giant that no one wanted to wake up prematurely. The much plainer-sounding Friday Coalition was much friendlier in comparison. Their culture was rich and varied as they used to be a collection of rare ethnic groups chased out from more settled parts of the galaxy. Such ordeals had scarred their national psyche, but to their credit they opened their doors instead of slamming them shut. Many promising geniuses from the surrounding third-rate states tended to flock to the Coalition to seek brighter futures. Many of his competitors in the Fusion Cup in fact attended one of the many elite institutions of the Coalition. There's bound to be masters in the Friday Coalition. The only problem is gaining an audience with them. I can't just come up to a master's doorstep. The value of a master mech designer did not lose out to national treasures. Each and every master's life was strictly regulated. Not even an errant fly could get near such vaunted people. As VES trawled through the galactic net for masters, he finally encountered an opportunity. Limar Institute of Technology. Annual Open Design Competition. The annual contest hosted by the Limar Institute was open to every designer below the age of 30. Though most contestants still attended the institute, each year plenty of outsiders who studied at other colleges converged in Limar in order to showcase their talents. Many people and businesses attended the grand event as well, as the competition often unveiled diamonds in the rough. From the articles describing past competitions, it was not unheard of for a novice mech designer to be noticed by an attending master. The open competition is in 20 days. My schedule is going to be tight if I want to travel all the way to the Friday Coalition. VES couldn't just leave his workshop behind. He was running a business now. He had to make arrangements. Chapter 67, Bodyguard. First, he called up Marcella. If the broker already had a deal lined up, then VES was in big trouble. It's not a responsible move to spring this road trip on me all of a sudden, Marcella icily said. Besides, do you think you even stand a chance? The Limar competition is one of the fiercest stages in the entire star sector. VES shrugged. He had zero confidence in winning anything before he upgraded his mechanics, but now was different. I have my own advantages. I think I can hold my own. Despite Marcella's constant haranguing, VES remained steadfast in his determination to go to Limar. Eventually the broker threw up her arms. Fine, be that way. Don't make me see you again only to tell you I told you so. I'll slow down and stretch out the negotiations for the current deal in progress. Maybe this trip might not be an entirely bad thing. If you stand out and perform well at Limar, your business will pick up remarkably. Unspoken was the fact that Marcella really held little confidence in VES. Though he impressed him enough to do business with him, that was accounting his potential. Too little time had passed for him to really grow into his own. On paper, he stood zero chance of even reaching the top 1,000 in Limar. Marcella took the time to explain the nuances of visiting the Friday Coalition. Unlike the Bright Republic, the Coalition is a lot more vigilant and scrutinized outsiders more strictly. The citizens also treated immigrants from third-rate states rather poorly, at least until they have proved themselves. All in all, VES should keep to himself and do nothing to attract the ire of his hosts. Even if the Friday Coalition is one of the weakest second-rate states in the galaxy, it has still reached a height the Bright Republic can never achieve. They consider themselves the true rulers of the Komodo star sector and are not shy in demonstrating their might. VES eventually hung up after receiving an earful of caution from Marcella. He frowned a little. Did he underestimate the coalition? It started as a refuge for persecuted people and still widely advertised their generous immigration policies for talented professionals. They blatantly poached the best and brightest of the surrounding third-rate states for centuries, keeping smaller states like the Bright Republic a remote backwater. There's more to the coalition than meets the eye, he concluded. The only things he knew about the coalition came from history books and the occasional drama broadcast. Now that he thought about it, the Republic probably didn't dare publish any material that was critical of the coalition. I've got to ensure my safety somehow. Traveling alone to Limar as a single mech designer is too dangerous. Though I'm not anything hot, someone might still try to find trouble with me if I'm all alone and defenseless. It wasn't unheard of for vulnerable mech designers to get poached through one way or another. Simple physical intimidation was enough to make most of them sign a restrictive contract. After all, they spent their entire lives designing war machines instead of improving their personal combat skills. I should bring a bodyguard. As VES expected his trip to take up to 2 months, the price of hiring a bodyguard shouldn't be too exorbitant. Luckily I completed the sale of my second mech. I'm not short on credits. The only question was who to hire. Should he go to Bentheim and contract a mercenary? Well, maybe I don't need to travel that far. If I recall, SAS should be a security company that originates from a second-rate state. Perhaps they extend the reach of their services to the Friday Coalition as well. It's worth a try. He activated his comm and contacted the representative of Sunyal Ablin. Miss Robin's pretty face emerged from the projector with a smile. Ah, Mr. Larkinson, a pleasure to see you again. How can I help you? I'm planning a short trip to Limar in order to take part in the mech design competition there. I'd like to ask if you can provide a bodyguard to accompany me there. Robin maintained her smile though some tension appeared in her eyes. We do offer short-term contracts for guards, but if you wish to extend this service to the coalition, then it will cost you quite a bit. Your guard has to meet very high standards in order to cope with the caliber of opponents he or she may face. Give me a number. She paused a little while she consulted some numbers. Around 9.5 million credits for a 2-month contract. He almost spurted blood at that exorbitant price. That was half a mech's worth of money. Do you have any more affordable options? None that our company allows. This is already one of the cheapest quotes from our coalition branch. I don't know if you are aware, but the Bright credit is a very weak currency compared to the coalition credit. The exchange rates are unfavorable because it just costs more to do business in the coalition. Miss Robin had a point. VES knew that SAS wasn't out to screw him. The coalition had access to abundant exotic resources. They used their massive population base to exploit these riches and build up their military and economy. Merely the disparity in mech army sent home how the coalition trumped almost every other state. While the Bright Republic mainly used the cheapest Currentgen mechs as their frontline models, the coalition featured the very best Currentgen mechs as their basic units. It was rumored that many elite commanders had already transitioned to next-gen models. Even the best mercenaries had access to mechs that could easily trounce the best of the Republic's mech corps. Let me consider my options for a moment. I'll contact you later in order to tell you what I've decided. Very well, but I should warn you that you won't get a better price anywhere else. Even if someone were to offer you a bargain, you will find that whoever gets sent will not be able to keep up in coalition territory. As the two closed the call, VES thought back about her words. She sounded very certain that VES would not be able to contract a capable guard. He considered calling Melinda or someone else in the Larkinson family, but halted in his steps. Most of the capable Larkinson pilots served in the mech corps. It wasn't possible to ask them to leave their stations and accompany him on his trip. A casual search on the galactic net revealed prices that VES found hard to stomach. Robin's words echoed in his head as he found that many security escorts came with a correspondingly high price tag. Expressed in coalition credits, it didn't sound too bad, but when converted to Bright credits it was enough to drain all of his savings. One of the biggest reasons why the price was so high was because short-term contracts came with a lot of upfront costs. It was more economical to contract a bodyguard over a longer period of time, though VES would never do such a thing. He simply didn't have the money. It all comes down to money. Without enough credits, I can't gain any meaningful power. He hadn't even traveled to the Friday Coalition and already he had a first-hand taste of its superiority. If VES translated the relative strengths of its economic might to military strength, then the result painted a bleak picture. VES faced perhaps the most significant choice concerning this trip. Personally, he thought the risk of encountering a pirate raid or some other unpleasant business was not that big. Spending an excessive amount of credits allocated for future purchases might turn out to be a wasted effort. It's not like I'm going off the beaten path. Limar is one of the core planets of the coalition and the space routes are well patrolled. What VES simply couldn't stomach was spending 10 million credits for a bodyguard that only accompanied him for a whopping 2 months. Perhaps someone born with a silver spoon like Vincent might accept the price without batting an eyelid, but VES was brought up in a frugal environment. Despite his father's generous salary, Wrinkle never spent any of it. In fact, VES still had no clue where his father stashed his savings. In the end, while he didn't doubt the integrity of SAS, he simply wasn't willing to throw away his hard-earned money. He considered his alternatives. Pretty much all of the reputable security companies offered the same baseline prices. Some of the shadier firms offered cheaper rates, but VES read enough horror stories on the net to realize that they posed the greatest threat to him if he enlisted their services. Several scams existed where a person and his guards that happened to encounter a gang of pirates that overpowered them. While the two sides acted like they were enemies, they were actually in cahoots with each other. Though this sort of thing didn't happen often, it was enough of a possibility for VES to rule out this option. He wanted a guard that was cheap, loyal, and strong enough to deter the most casual riffraff from starting any trouble. With my budget and circumstances, I'll be lucky if I get 2 out of 3. Now where can I find such a chump? His list of contacts was woefully small. Out of the names in his list, one group had potential, if barely. Walter's Whalers might be a small-time gang that ruled over a single rural planet, but they were not antagonistic to his mech business. They shared a common interest in helping Cloudy Curtain develop its economy. Despite his better instincts telling him that it was a terrible idea, VES decisively chose to contact Dietrich, the so-called little boss. Hey. Look who's back. What's up, my man VES? Dietrich greeted him over the comm even as he was doing something that required him to discard all of his clothes. The smile on V's face grew cramped. I'd like to inquire you about some business, but if you're indisposed, I can call you back later. Oh no, I'm not too busy. I'm the master of multitasking, baby. The little boss boasted, and several enthusiastic voices cheered in the background. Just spit it out. My ears are always open to you. VES already regretted contacting Dietrich. Perhaps he should reconsider Sonia Labelin's offer. But when the price tag came into view, his eyes hardened. He didn't want to waste his precious savings. Chapter 68, Harrier. Surprisingly, the little boss was receptive to the idea. I always wanted to see the coalition with my own eyes. My old man always nags about the power of the gangs operating in the center of the Star Sector. It's about time I take a look. VES did not expect Dietrich to offer to come in person. It's not necessary for you to accompany me. I can make do with any decent pilot. No, you deserve better. While I'm not as good as the old coots who have been with my father for centuries, I can still hold my own. After several attempts to change his escort, VES gave up. At least the little boss offered to accompany him for free. Though his caliber was nowhere near a bodyguard worth 10 million credits, he was not a pushover. That should be enough. Say, I'd like to ask a favor from you. Dietrich smiled with more than a little slyness. Since you're a fancy designer, you should know a lot about mechs, right? I'd like you to tinker with my mech. Just a tune-up is okay. I'm not sure that's a good idea. It will take time, and I need extra materials. Haha, no worries. We have a small stockpile of spare parts. You can grab anything you want as long as my mech gets better. As for the time, well, we both know it won't take an entire month to reach Limar unless you take the cheapest space lines. Since he was loaded with money for the moment, VES already reserved a first-class seat aboard a premium space line. It took little effort for Dietrich to reserve the seat next to him and also pay for the privilege to bring along his mech. Naturally, the war machine would be safed and stowed in the cargo section of the giant passenger ship. All right, just head over to our base in Freslin. You know where it is. I'll clear you to use anything from our workshop and storage. As VES hung up, he sighed. Seems like he was pretty much stuck with Dietrich. Besides, it might not be a bad thing to develop a closer relationship with the heir of Walter's Whalers. His men could keep an eye on his workshop in his absence. He didn't fully trust his basic automatic security systems to keep out determined thieves. After a brief trip aboard an aircar, VES arrived at the same dilapidated-looking base where he first met Dietrich. Thankfully Dietrich looked fresh this time, wearing a smart suit that belied the power in his limbs. Unlike Vincent, the little boss was a warrior to the core. He did not let his excesses affect his combat capability. Right, you're finally here. Let me bring you to my mech. You're going to love her. She's been my beauty for well over 2 years. She's a veritable classic. Dietrich unceremoniously dragged VES into the rusting workshop area. Several oil-stained technicians were conducting haphazard maintenance on the mech stowed inside. They walked up to the very end of the workshop, which revealed an imposing silhouette of a medium flyer. Well, Dietrich was right in one aspect. His mech was a classic. It was actually a National Aeromotives Harrier VCX-4B. While it was a current-gen design, the design came out at the very start of this generation's commencement. It was an age design, with a couple of premium features. National Aeromotives only entered the mech market a generation ago. Its main products were still shuttles and aircars, so their accumulated knowledge concerning flight was very substantial. Besides brief forays into land mechs such as the Caesar Augustus, all the other mechs NA manufactured specialized in flight. The Harrier was not a typical workhorse unit, though it shared many features with standard current-gen frontline models. It focused mainly on endurance and therefore relied on fuel rather than direct energy to sustain its airtime. Its beefy flight system was capable of switching between energy-saving mode and high-intensity flight mode at the cost of weighing a bit more than other flight systems. This made the medium mech carry only a fairly light amount of armor for a medium mech. Still, NA always excelled in developing heat-resistant armor, so the Harrier fared pretty well against energy weapons. As for its weapon complement, it mainly relied on its ballistic rifle to dish out the hurt. While it weighed down the mech even more, it allowed the Harrier to devote most of its energy to power its flight. The Harrier was capable of carrying a sufficient amount of shells if it decided to forego most melee weaponry. Dietrich proudly approached the mech's foot and slapped his palm against its armor. "Look at this beauty. Can't you see how lovingly I treated her all this time?" VES had to admit that the V-C-4B was well maintained. Evidently the technicians under the employ of the whalers didn't dare slack off concerning Dietrich's personal mech. It must be the only time they actually earned their pay. As VES had little experience working on finished mechs, he might as well take the chance to study the Harrier. He borrowed the workshop's diagnostic tools to scan the Harrier from top to bottom. The readings told him that the mech had over a quarter of its parts replaced, and not all of the new parts were standard. In particular, it was difficult to get replacement armor plates from a source other than National Aeromotives directly. Naturally, they charged sky-high prices for replacements. With his vastly improved mechanic skill, VES noted that whoever repaired the armor had some skills, but did not account for every factor. He guessed that the mech's center of balance was slightly out of alignment, which affected a host of things that did not result in anything good. "I can see it needs some work. If you don't mind, I'll be taking some things apart and replacing them with something else. Be my guest, VES. That's why I've invited you here for. As long as you can make my baby run better, I'm okay with anything." It was reassuring to hear Dietrich place so much trust in VES. For now, their interests aligned. The bonds between the two tightened as they mutually sought to take advantage of each other. VES wanted to shelter under the umbrella of the whalers, while Dietrich sought to enlist a high-end engineer. VES went to work on the Harrier. He first took out all of the replacement armor and set them aside. He then inspected the internals underneath and made a few calculations. If he wanted to reset the center of balance, then he had to move stuff around. One bad habit that National Aeromotives never shook off is that it inherited Jason Kozlowski's penchant of stuffing too much goodies in very little space. Fortunately, the Harrier wasn't so bad in that regard. NA certainly tried to curb their habits as much as possible so VES didn't have to risk bumping into something delicate when he moved a couple of minor components around. One limiting factor was that over a quarter of the internals were dedicated to supporting the flight system. VES lacked the expertise to play around with these components without screwing up the mech's flight capabilities. His background in ballistic weaponry was also too shallow for him to tweak the ballistic rifle, let alone understand it completely. "I should try to plug this hole a bit once I have some DP to spare. I can't rely on beginners' knowledge concerning weaponry forever if I want to keep up with the higher echelons of mech designers." Overall, the mech technicians had done a good job keeping the Harrier in shape. VES did not have to correct any glaring errors, just minor misjudgments. He did add one little surprise. His hands sneaked into the pouch carrying all of Lucky's gems and withdrew a dusky jasper. The round gem's appearance evoked a layered landscape, though VES paid little attention to that. The unassuming gem had a property of improving the mech's agility by 1%. He sneakily installed the gem inside a well-protected alcove where technicians were least likely to inspect. "Hopefully it will do its job," VES muttered and turned his attention to putting the mech back together. He took the replacement armor plates to a hammering tool and lightly worked them over so they conformed a little better to the Harrier. The mistake the technicians made was to think it was sufficient picking any random armor plating that weighed about the same and shape it in the exact way as the old one. In reality, each armor exhibited different properties and should always be treated from a fresh perspective. After VES put the armor plates back in, he requested Dietrich to enter the cockpit and test the mech. The retuned machine moved fluently and with grace despite the large flight system getting in the way of its movements. "It feels great. It's like all of my aches and sores have gone away." The improvement was marginal, but every little bit counted. Both VES and Dietrich were satisfied with the work. While the mech specs hardly moved, Dietrich piloted his mech more naturally. VES realized that tuning existing mechs might not be a waste of time. It took very little effort and investment on his part to bring up a mech back to full functionality. If VES ever ran into a dry spell of orders, he could advertise his abilities as a mech tuner and earn some pocket money by tinkering with older mechs such as the Harrier. After making sure nothing blew up in their faces, VES said goodbye to Dietrich and finished his other preparations. He stopped by at Sonja Labelin's office and paid a little extra money to keep his security suite functioning even when he was away for an extended period of time. "It is regretful that you declined our offer to escort you to Limar," Robin added after they dealt with this matter. "While the main space routes of the Coalition are well patrolled, nothing is absolute. And that isn't even taking into consideration what can happen planetside. I really do wish I can hire your bodyguard, but my financial situation simply doesn't allow it." VES excused himself as he stood and left for the exit. "However, that doesn't mean I will pass you by in the future. Once I get a good volume of sales, I'll be sure to take advantage of your other services." "That sounds wonderful, Mr. Larkinson. We are always ready to serve your needs." When VES returned to his workshop, he packed up his luggage and made sure to stow away all the loose tools and bots. He turned off and set the 3D printer and assembler into hibernation mode. As VES turned off the lights, he wondered how much would change once he returned from Limar. "Hopefully I'll come back as a triumphant apprentice to a renowned master." VES had a fitful night of sleep as his excitement was hard to suppress. He lived, studied, and worked in the Bright Republic for his entire life. Never had he stepped foot on a star beyond the borders of his familiar state. Chapter 69, The Incident. The Ricklins gathered at an open field next to Vincent's mansion. Normally, the elders of the vaunted family never paid attention to Vincent. However, the duel he so loudly proclaimed in the news inadvertently involved the family's honor. Some bystanders might become surprised to see someone cared about Vincent's reputation for once. The difference from previous situations was that Vincent only disgraced himself with dubious lifestyle choices so far. How could anything he do be any worse? The key difference involved mechs. Values such as honor, bravery, and service to your state were intertwined with modern society. As disgraceful Vincent had already been, chickening out a duel not once but twice would smear their name to such an extent that they'd start to lose business opportunities. "We're the coward who calls himself a mech pilot." A booming voice broadcasted from a tall and bulky heavy mech. "For all his bragging, he better be here on time. I don't want to miss my own victory party." At both sides of the field stood two groups of spectators. The smaller group was obviously the Ricklins, along with a smattering of Vincent's playboy friends. On the other side of the field stood a similar group of elders and young second-generation princes. It was evident without saying that Vincent attracted the ire of the backing of his opponent. Keeping both sides safe were guards and security screens. Scores of technicians were busy preparing the field by setting up strengthened security screens that did not lose out to the powerful shields that kept arena battles contained. Just beyond the perimeter were scores of patrolling mechs. No outsider would have the opportunity to sneak close. Within the core of Ricklin elders sat a dainty, fresh-eyed maiden. Her petite body contrasted remarkably with her predatory blue eyes. She flipped her exquisite blonde locks and yawned. "When will my idiot brother arrive?" Caitlin asked one of her many attendants. "It's almost time to start." "Young miss, word has just arrived that Vincent has boarded his new mech. He should be here in a couple of minutes. Always late to the party, I see." As usual. The young heiress of the Ricklin line thought this duel was a waste of time. Vincent had no skill in piloting mechs despite possessing the requisite aptitude. Their descendants never produced potentates, thus they never valued honor and duty. What was the point of dying in combat when you could pay someone else to do it in your stead? Money was the real road to power. Personal combat prowess was irrelevant in her eyes. Nevertheless, just because the Ricklins took a dim view on duels didn't mean that others thought the same. In this modern, mech-obsessed age, to receive a challenge and refuse outright was a sign of cowardice. To issue a subsequent challenge and not show up was a sign that your entire family line was craven and untrustworthy. Caitlin gnashed her teeth, the force of which could crack any baseline human's teeth. After many years of lying low, Vincent had gone overboard with his excessive personality and crossed the line. It was a mistake long in the making, but the Ricklins were blindsided when it finally happened. Even her vaunted intellect hadn't anticipated such an incident due to her innate disdain for her older and genetically inferior brother. When Vincent finally stomped over with his new mech, everyone stopped their small talk and gaped at the sight. A majestic black, red and golden mech approached the improvised arena with immeasurable confidence. It was as if it mistook the astonishment from the crowd with worship. "What is that?" Caitlin growled. "It appears to be a codpiece." The modified Mark Antony made for a unique sight. While the cape and embedded lights were bad enough, the extra piece of equipment mounted at the front of the waist attracted everyone's attention. No one could get their head around why a mech needed a codpiece. "You're a goner, Turin, because I have something you don't." Vincent confidently boomed out of his brand new mech speakers. "There's no way a man can lose to a eunuch." The situation escalated from there. Turin, the pilot of the Heavy Knight, raged inside the cockpit. "You, clown. You've gone too far. I'll beat you up and kick that stupid organ into scrap. Ha 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 ha. I don't need to listen to a sissy hiding in a heavy mech like you. I bet yours is so small that you feel the need to compensate by dash. That's enough. I'm going to shut your mouth." Turin yelled back as he exploded into action. The crowd was caught off guard by the heavy mech's impulsive action. The technicians who were busy installing the security screens quickly rushed their work in order to safeguard their clients. A couple of knights stepped closer and stood in front of the crowd in order to shield them from any errant shots or flying debris. Caitlin's head guard stared worriedly at the charging Heavy Knight. "Perhaps it is better to step back. We cannot trust these security screens to shield us completely." "Yes, let's. There is no need to witness this barbarity this close." The Ricklins calmly walked away, intent on enlarging the buffer between them and the impending violence. Meanwhile, the Heavy Knight lumbered closer to the Mark Antony, which still stood as if it was preening into the sun. Just as the Heavy Knight was about to collide with the medium mech, something inexplicable happened. The Heavy Knight adjusted its course and avoided Vincent's mech. Instead, it continued to careen forward without any sign of stopping. What is happening? Did he miss on purpose? Turin isn't stopping. He's going to collide against the security screen. The hastily erected security screen broke like a pane of glass when the Multiton heavy mech barreled right through. Its momentum bled off, but the knight resumed its stride and collided its shield against a nearby Ricklin mech. Chaos ensued as many other mechs suffered from surprise attacks. Most of the mechs stationed in the field came from Vincent and Turin's retinue. Many of these mechs inexplicably suffered from malfunctions and shut down just as they stepped forward to stop the madness. It was not that the Ricklins thought to bring other guards. As they assigned these guards to Vincent themselves, they were assured of their ironclad loyalty. While their loyalty might not be in question, the local technicians who maintained their mechs were obviously different. Thus, many mechs found themselves frozen and unable to move at all. Only some mechs brought from the outside still functioned properly and moved to stop Turin and Vincent's rampage. "Young miss. Vincent and Turin have gone crazy. Their assassination you. I can see that for myself, you dummy. Let's go." The group of pampered elites scrambled to flee. They approached the nearby site where they parked their luxury aircars, only for Caitlin to halt. "Stop." Despite her youth, most Ricklins with decades of experience under their belt obeyed. They turned to her as if she was their only hope. "Who designated the parking area?" "As far as I know, Vincent's personal assistant made all the arrangements. I'm fairly certain that Johnson is the one who directed us to park over there." "Then it isn't safe. Who knows how many explosives these rebels have planted underneath. Let's turn in a different direction." As Caitlin's words made sense, none argued otherwise. Despite the temptation offered by the aircars, this was evidently a planned assassination. More evidence came from the chaos happening at the edge of the field. An outside party engaged most of the perimeter guard mechs that were still intact. From the amount of noise the distant battle generated, the terrorists came in ample numbers. "Spread out. Don't bundle up too close." While Turin engaged the closest mechs, Vincent finally made his move. His shoulder-mounted missile launchers expended their entire payload in one go. The deadly guided projectiles aimed straight at Caitlin and the other Ricklin elders. A couple of still functional elite guards jumped in the way with their shields. Just as they braced themselves for impact, a couple of the projectiles accelerated with such force that they pushed the mechs aside. Those are concussive missiles. The rest of the missiles also displayed unusual traits by smoothly going around any mechs in the way. Only anti-missile fire was effective in stopping them. Just as the surviving volley landed at the group of panicking Ricklins, the final guard mech threw out his shield and used its own body to block the final payloads. The shockwaves threw many people off their feet. The burning radiance of the explosions hadn't taken out the mech, but dealt severe damage beyond any regular missile on the market. Haha, you're mine now, little sis. Vincent laughed hysterically as his customized mech stomped over a disabled mech. The Mark Antony dropped its shield and raised both arms in Caitlin's direction. The wrist-mounted laser cannons charged up for a full-powered salvo. Any last words? Caitlin coughed as she rose from her knees. I see you're more stupid than I thought, big brother. Do you think that just because you've been secretly training your piloting skills that you've got an edge on me? Imbecile. Shut up. I'm tired of listening to your condescending insults. You should have died in the lab like the rest of your worthless batch. His mech fired of both cannons at once. Though their accuracy wasn't great, at this short distance they came close enough to vaporize any human by proximity alone. The lasers reached Caitlin's position at light speed. An area the size of an aircar parking lot instantly got scorched with an immense amount of thermal energy. Scores of Ricklin elders who were too slow to run very far got turned into ash and smoke. Those who ran just a little faster got blasted with so much heat that their clothes turned into tar and ash while exposing their bodies with a lethal dose of heat. They fell down to the ground like melted candles. Only the younger generation managed to escape the blast zone with minimal wounds. Ha 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 ha. For all your snooty words, look at me now. As the blackened smoke cleared, the site where his laser cannon struck was a mass of heated devastation. Nothing other than a tank or a mech could have survived such a powerful blast. At least, that was what Vincent thought. A strange bubble enveloped Caitlin's body. She stood proudly intact inside the shield, unbothered by the heat and ash. As scores of badly burned Ricklins moaned at the edges of the blast site, the young genetically modified girl appeared nonchalant at the carnage. Her expression even stared mockingly at Vincent. What is this shield? How come it's so powerful? You're not the only one with powerful friends. The younger sister taunted. You're welcome to shoot me again. I dare say I can hold you off before my backup arrives. As Vincent stared at his surviving sister in horror, a series of sirens started to erupt from the city proper. Explosions and other sounds of battle started to drum in the distance. All over Bentheim, unassuming mercenary groups started to board their mechs and attacked without reason. According to the plan, Vincent should already be finished with his revenge and make his way towards a nearby escape shuttle. The timetable was tight, and Vincent couldn't afford to hammer away at Caitlin's strange shield if he wanted to escape from the planetary guard. He gritted his teeth as he made a difficult decision. He could always enact his revenge later. His own life was more important. Turin. Stop playing around and let's go. Even as their strike against Caitlin failed, they still managed to cull most of the other Ricklins. Their comrades in arms stationed elsewhere in Bentheim also succeeding in their surprise attacks. Bentheim's infrastructure suffered serious damage, and the death toll rapidly rose as the fires spread. It was the prelude to war. Chapter 70, Hasty Exit. Back in Cloudy Curtain, VES woke up with tired eyes. Since yesterday, he prepared his departure with Dietrich. They booked a brief flight to one of Bentheim's orbital space station and wait for their long-distance passenger ship to arrive. A call interrupted his final preparations. VES picked up the comm and Marcella's worried face showed up. VES, about your trip. Perhaps it's best to make yourself scarce for a month or two. There's trouble afoot. This sounded serious. Something that disturbed the unflappable Marcella should not be a trivial matter. What happened? It's about Vincent Ricklin. He's gone mad. He went on a rampage when he demonstrated your customized Mark Antony's prowess to his family. Just hearing Vincent's name again made VES wish he reconsidered doing business with him in the first place. Sure, the credits was nice, but if he did something serious enough for Marcella to call him in the morning, then it was bound to be bad. How bad is it, and how will it affect me? He tried to fire his laser cannons on the presumptive heir of the Ricklins, a lass called Caitlin. Somehow, she survived, though how I don't know, but many other elders failed to get away from the blast area. Vincent buelled through the household guards and escaped from Bentheim with a well-prepared escape shuttle. That sounded like a lot of trouble. Though VES was uninvolved with this terrorist attack, he'd be in for a lot of scrutiny just by providing the mech to Vincent. Did the mech corps catch him? The frown in Marcella's face grew even more grim. No. He had help that delayed the rapid response units. Pirates somehow smuggled themselves onto Bentheim and caused enough chaos to cover Vincent's escape. Nearby patrol ships all found themselves crippled by explosions when they attempted to chase their escape vessels. They've succeeded in pulling off the most blatant attack on Bentheim. The news was incredibly bad for all those who had an inkling of involvement with the events. How's the casualties? Excluding the Ricklins, over 200 people have fallen in the ensuing chaos. The pirates weren't subtle in their actions. You know the damage a mech can do in a densely populated city. It must be a nightmare back in Bentheim. Even the most casual laser fire might cut through a building and wipe out a dozen innocent bystanders. The injured must run up in the thousands. I can't stay behind, VES said as he simultaneously felt conflicted. As bad as I feel right now, I'm really innocent. You know the Mark Antony is a last-gen mech. It's hardly an elite mech in today's standards. That's why I support your impromptu vacation. Right now the public is in a frenzy and the mech corps has fallen flat in securing the star system. The investigators must be in a frenzy right now and it won't be long before they send someone your way. I think my family can stall them. The Larkinsons have always been loyal to the Republic and they have some say in military circles. Well, you best call on your daddy because this show is just starting. He worriedly hung up on Marcella and with just a brief moment of hesitation he called his grandfather. Perhaps anticipating his call, Benjamin Larkinson appeared on his screen. His unflappable face already radiated assurance to VES. I know what's going on, and I know you're not guilty of anything. Thanks, Grandpa. VES sighed as the reassurance comforted him. I was planning on traveling to Limar in order to take part in the open competition there. Could you help me smooth over my departure? This event is really important to me and my career and I can't afford to miss this opportunity due to being held back for questioning. I can guarantee that the investigators give you fair treatment, but any sudden departure will look suspicious. I can hold them back from chasing after you if you open up your records and let their people scour your workshop. As VES carried his real secrets in his comm, he had no problems letting others take a peek. Sunyal Ablin pretty much saw everything there was to his workshop when they installed their security suite. Letting the government grab a good look was nothing to fuss about. They can do whatever they want as long as my workshop stays intact at the end. I still need to make a living, you know. I hope you can impress that on whoever is coming here to find something that doesn't exist. Oh, you can be certain I won't let them get out of line. Benjamin grinned. I've kept an eye on you and I can say that you've made us proud. The last thing I want to do is to let your hard work get ruined. So don't worry. I'll call in some favors and try to suppress any suspicions on you. It's just that some suspicion will never go away. His grandfather was right. Having his second ever produced mech be involved in a violent terrorist incident was going to be a black mark in his record. But VES did not let it drag down his hopes. He still had a way to redeem himself if he worked hard. What do you think the investigators will do if I return a couple months later as an apprentice to a master mech designer? The old man's eyes widened. Even a senior military official like him was nothing but an ant compared to a venerated master. You will find that many obstacles will melt away like snow in a warm spring day. The prestige of a master mech designer is not to be trifled with. Even a casual apprenticeship to such an eminent person will deter all gossip. In the end, it came to power and backing. If VES had studied at an elite institution from the Friday Coalition, he'd never had to worry about being detained for days. I'll hopefully return triumphant, Grandpa. Go then. Spread your wings and see the worlds beyond the Republic. It's a tumultuous place in the center of the star sector. You will see many riches and wonders. Just remember that all of that wealth and power is built upon a foundation of strength. After Benjamin terminated the call, VES made some additional preparations. He sent a message to Robin that SAS should let any official investigators enter his workshop without challenge. He then sent another message to the little boss with a summary of the situation and telling him to meet at the spaceport immediately. Well, guess I'm out of here. Let's go, Lucky. Men and Gemcat turned to look at the workshop for the last time before entering the aircar. VES browsed the news as his taxi zipped towards the spaceport. The footage the news broadcasters streamed to the rest of the Republic showed that Bentham had descended into chaos. Its openness as a port system worked against securing the planet. Too many mercenaries with shady affiliations entered the planet. Some of them turned out to be disguised pirates that somehow fooled Bentham's stringent security checks. Worse yet, in the hunt for pirates, the overzealous planetary guard sometimes struck mercenaries who were not involved in today's premeditated assault. The battles threatened to spill out and cause even further casualties. What hurt VES the most was the occasional footage of what sparked this ambush. The highly modified Mark Antony with its codpiece and all raised its laser cannons and shot straight at a group of defenseless bystanders. The news stations immortalized the brief recording with how hard they tried to send it out to the rest of the star sector. Damn it. Forget about the codpiece, Vincent's mere involvement will be an unerasable black mark in my record. As he hastily suggested to his grandfather, his only way to redeem himself was to achieve his goals in Limar. Only by attaining some kind of formidable backing would he be able to endure the scrutiny. The commentators and pundits already speculated on the influence that attacked the Republic. Nobody really believed a bunch of no-name pirates planned, funded, manned, and executed the intricate raid all by themselves. A lot of Republicans pointed the finger at the monarchists of the Vija Kingdom despite the lack of any convincing evidence that hinted at their hand. Even VES found this theory compelling. As a homebred citizen of the Bright Republic, he was raised to regard the Vija Kingdom as their archrivals. Only the Vijans had sufficient motives to find trouble with the Republic. Hey, VES. It's a bad day today. Dietrich finally greeted him once he arrived by the spaceport. The little boss looked quite subdued at the moment as he worried for the well-being of Walter's whalers. I feel kind of bad leaving my mates behind. We're only gone for 2 months or so. A war won't erupt this soon. Actually, VES had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. He just said that to reassure his bodyguard. The two subdued young men eagerly boarded a large passenger transport to Bentham with their floating luggage bots. Besides that, VES brought an ever-curious Lucky along while Dietrich already stowed away his mech in a container aboard their ship. The passenger ship was only half filled this time, an oddity attributed to the attack. Some sought safety in Bentham's large numbers, but most locals felt it was best to stay on their quiet, unimportant planet and avoid the giant target Bentham represented. After all, the Vijans never hid their desire to engulf the port system. The trip to Bentham was brief and uneventful, save for the additional security measures. The transport had to stop in space and allow inspectors to scan each passenger and piece of cargo in person. One of the inspectors paused briefly when he scanned VES, but whatever instructions he received forced him to move on. The people who went over Dietrich's mech added extra seals to his machine. This didn't stop him from using his mech in an emergency, but it took an experienced mech technician at least half an hour to make it battle-ready. As they arrived at the Bentham spaceport, they encountered a deluge of humanity. Scores of soldiers kept the peace as they tried to corral the emigrating people in a semblance of order. VES could only rely on Dietrich's strength to squeeze through the mobs. This is insane. VES yelled at Dietrich as they waited behind a line. His words could barely be heard over the panic din of conversation. There's so many people seeking safer refuge. It's better if these cowards get out. They're nothing but useless sacks of meat. Eventually, they made use of their priority boarding access and entered a much more orderly area. Only the affluent could afford business-class tickets that allowed them passage on a premium space line. Both VES and Dietrich looked out the window to behold the giant monstrosity that carried them out of the Republic. Torch of the Vanguard. Townsend Space Lines. The patriotic name referred to some kind of event or myth that happened early in the Bright Republic's history. While the Republic subsidized the construction of the ship, the operating owners of the entire line resided in the coalition. Marcella highly recommended this line to VES. The enormous passenger ship plied the spaceways from the Republic to all of the other third-rate states in between until she finally reached the edge of Coalition space. Then she traveled the same way back, escorted by a small contingent of space-capable mechs. Naturally, all of this safety, luxury, and speed came at a cost. VES and Dietrich parted with a whopping 150,000 bright credits each, and that was just for business class. The passenger ship offered even more extravagant tiers that came with private swimming pools and state-of-the-art sparring arenas. Here's to a new adventure. VES whispered to himself as he held Lucky tight and followed the excited Dietrich aboard the magnificent vessel. Chapter 71, Departure. Dietrich and VES entered a modestly luxurious compartment where they stayed for the duration of the trip. It featured as much space as half a house. Besides offering 2 separate bedrooms, it featured an opulent living room decorated with generous amounts of gold and blue, the spaceline's oft-used colors. What VES particularly liked was that a door led to a small, private workspace with a secured terminal. With the promised privacy offered by Townsend Airlines, VES could work on his designs in peace. He planned to do a lot of catching up now that he had time to spare. Man, these beds are great. Don't mind if I bring some company over, if you know what I mean. Dietrich suggestively said as he jumped right onto the bouncy mattress of his chosen bed. VES studiously ignored the implications of those words as he calmly packed his luggage away. Lucky roamed around the room with adventurous mirth, pawing his forearm against a shiny vase. Whoa! Look at the prices of this dinner menu. They're charging 47,000 credits for the top 18-course meal. Don't even think about it, Dietrich. I don't think either of us can afford to squander so much money. Besides, we already paid for complimentary meals. In actuality, the Torch of the Vanguard greatly resembled cruise ships whose sole purpose was to tour the most interesting sights in space. The main boulevards inside the ship was lined with shops featuring handcrafted luxuries. Those interested in culture could visit the museums and various theaters. As for those more immersed in the world of mechs, a small arena was nested at the bowels of the vessels. The Torch was like a city unto itself, one that traveled constantly from system to system. The amount of credits it took to keep it running was astronomical. The frugal VES disliked wasting so much credits on a simple passage, but that was the price to ensure his safety. The cheaper space lines all had dubious records when it came to protecting their passengers from errant pirate raids. As VES was just about to join Dietrich outside to witness the ship's departure, he received a priority call. He picked it up and met Marcella's ambivalent face. Looks like you've got some news, Marcella. Somewhat. You know you gave access of your Iron Spirit Designer account to me, right? Well, I set some triggers in case anything unusual happened, and one of them tripped this morning. You should head to a terminal and see for yourself what has happened. Hopefully his account wasn't banned for terrorism or something. VES told Dietrich to wait and quickly sat before a terminal. Luckily, Iron Spirit's lobby already came installed on the terminal, though full immersion wasn't possible without simulation pods. As he entered the game, he checked his statistics. What the? 31 C1 Mark Antonies got sold. Just as VES sat back with amazement, he saw the ticker of his sales count increase by 1, meaning another of his virtual mechs got sold. For better or worse, the infamy of today's incident drew a spotlight to your mechs. I've even received some offers for you to replicate your customized mech. Really? Including the codpiece. Especially the codpiece. You don't seem to realize how much of a trendsetter you've unwittingly become. There are already some other mechs who sporting the same kind of codpiece. That sounded like he was getting ripped off. That's my design. They shouldn't be able to copy it without my permission. That's why I'm calling you. First, you should raise the prices of your virtual mechs, at least the ones based on the Caesar Augustus. Second, register your customized design at the MTA so that anyone that wants to copy your codpiece design will have to cough up some money. Third, while it's your personal choice, I really suggest you put up your customized design for sale in-game. I can guarantee you it will sell like hotcakes. VES nodded and agreed with some of the proposals. He talked a bit more about how to take advantage of his design's current infamy and the trade-off between achieving a lot of sales versus keeping his reputation clean. While VES greatly valued his reputation, he was willing to put it aside when it came to earning DP. The precious design points were notoriously different to earn, but right now the unintentional publicity concerning his second-ever Mark Antony changed the equation. He quickly called up his status and grinned uncontrollably at the amount of DP he earned from the virtual sales. With every 5-star virtual mech sold, I get 50 DP from the system. Combined with other incidental sales along with my previous savings, I'm already looking at 1800 DP. The magnetic pull of earning shiploads of DP had overridden any other practical concerns. His eyes turned into shining gems of DP as he tried to envision what he could buy with the system's most valuable currency. Even purchasing one of the expensive attribute boosts from the item store was not out of the question. Considering my next destination, I can use all the DP I can get. The system gave him the daunting task of apprenticing himself to a master. These eminent personalities were spoiled for choice. They could pick from tens of thousands of hopeful mech designers at any time. The only way VES could stand out and receive an opportunity to beg them for an apprenticeship was to perform well in the upcoming open competition. Coming from a third-rate state, VES was quite aware of his backwardness. His knowledge base paled in comparison to what even the worst novice learned in any of the Friday Coalition's colleges. I'm too far behind, he concluded. The inferiority gnawed at him. He already had a taste of how formidable the exclusive knowledge could be manifested when he faced all of those elite graduates in the Young Tigers exhibition. VES practically lucked out in reaching the finals, but he hit a solid wall in the form of Edwin McKinney. Despite their similar ages, the mere difference in where they studied proved to be a decisive factor in how far they could go. A diploma from the Rittersberg University of Technology was worth less than the toilet paper of any of the Friday Coalition's vaunted universities. If I can't catch up to my rivals in terms of skills, I can forget about participating in Limar. With that thought, VES decisively tweaked his online sales page. He left the prices the same, but he did load his customized design into the game and put it on sale. CA 1 CD Mark Antony, male variant. Purchase price, 900,000 gold. Premium price, 27,500 bright credits. The prices VES charges were very generous and did not lose out to any other 5-star mechs. He elegantly attached the moniker of male variant to the design, as if he simply meant to distinguish it from his genderless model. It sure sounded classier than the alternatives he came up with, such as Bling Edition or Bigasticus. Well, let's get you to work. I expect a lot of sales from you while the hype still lasts, he said to his latest product on sale, feeling a bit like a pimp pushing his whore to the streets. He closed the terminal and left the cabin along with an impatient Dietrich. They navigated the gently illuminated halls with their carpets and artwork until they finally reached one of the observatory areas at the top of the ship. A handful of other passengers stood around or sat at the many benches. They all gazed at the orbital space station spinning above Benthime's chaotic surface. Their smug faces and low conversations made it clear that they did not hold much sympathy. They were like gods sneering over the trials and tribulations of the mortals suffering beneath their feet. Though VES disliked such attitudes, there was no point coming into conflict with them. From their fancy suits and dresses, he gathered that they could easily crush him by their net worths alone. A lot of people are running away, Dietrich huffed as he scratched his stubble. Can't say I blame them. If you have the money, why not move to somewhere better? Hey, will you move as well if you make it into the big leagues? VES shook his head as he admired the jewel of a planet underneath his feet. The Republic is my home. It doesn't feel right abandoning my homeland. Frankly, the system was a cheat. Any ordinary mech designer had to seek apprenticeships from masters living in more developed states. As for him, as long as he kept selling mechs he'd earn enough DP to develop his chosen skills. He enjoyed an incredible luxury over his fellow designers that allowed him to avoid pledging his loyalty to a greater party. Every passenger and all their cargo finished boarding the passenger ship. The mighty torch slowly lumbered into life as a fraction of its powerful engines started to detach the ship from the space station. Escorted and helped along by a couple of tugs, the spaceship headed straight towards a Lagrange point, skipping past many smaller vessels along the way. All that money sure is well spent. Evidently our ship is important enough to skip the queue. Faster than VES had thought, the torch reached the approximate area where gravity allowed the ship to jump into FTL. With a disembodying zip, the vessel emerged into the swirling confusion of physics referred to simply as FTL space. The scientists had a proper name for it, but no one cared. Right, the show's over. This is going to take a while. Let's go grab some drinks. VES didn't decline Dietrich's invitation. He had a long month ahead of him and he could use some relaxation before he started to go to work. He wanted to use his time well and prepare as best he could for Limar. Still, internally he felt insecure. No master mech designers were willing to waste their valuable time instructing an average apprentice. They presided over major organizations that allowed them to pick the cream of the crop. Most masters adopted promising geniuses when they just started their studies into mech design, sometimes even earlier. To a master, an apprenticeship represented more than a simple exchange of knowledge. A good apprentice carried the name and reputation of his master as he exercised skills derived from his master's unique insights. Thus, a meticulous master was said to emphasize the teaching of their design philosophy. As VES followed Dietrich to the entertainment section of the ship, he wondered what his philosophy consisted of. Certainly his meager focus in speed and armor was not sufficient to form an ethos. The only thing that's truly unique to all my designs is my emphasis on X factor. He wasn't sure if he could find any similar approach to the masters present in Limar. Likely he had to keep that secret locked up in order to avoid attracting the wrong kind of attention. In fact, VES wasn't sure if seeking a closer relationship with a master had any benefits for him. The system already offered him an entire galaxy's worth of knowledge. Well, even if I'm not very serious about finding a master, I should still do it to complete the quest. He wondered what the system intended by forcing him to travel so far away. Was he wrong about the usefulness of a master? Was it worth getting close to one and risk exposing his many secrets? Chapter 72, Awkward. To planet-bound people, the notion of space travel required a bit of explanation to figure it out. Despite the immensity of the galaxy, it mostly consisted of empty space with a couple of stars in between. The sheer scale of it caused those couple of stars to pile up into many billions. It took a lot of time to travel from one star to another, even with FTL. It was not as if FTL travel was too slow, but it took a lot of calculations and precision to nail the right destination. A single % deviation in the coordinates could throw a ship off course by hundreds of light years. Only through vital port systems could ships speed up their navigation. Like lighthouses in the dark, they allowed distant ships to hone in on a location much easier, with much less risk of overshooting their destination. A highly advanced vessel such as the Torch of the Vanguard was capable of performing the monstrous calculations necessary to jump over entire states. The moment she entered FTL, she was on course to a star system from a neighboring state. Her modern FTL drive compressed an awe-inspiring distance of dozens of light-years to a mere 2-day journey. Not that VES, Dietrich, or any other passenger paid attention to the ship's incredible speed. Technology such as this was commonplace, though on the expensive side. Instead, Dietrich half-dragged VES into one of the vessel's many bars. As it was still universal daytime, the rather plain-looking drinking hole looked rather sparse. Most of the patrons wore the uniform of Townsend Space Lines, their tight collars unzipped and faces relaxed as they enjoyed an off-shift moment. "Hey there. 2 Crinchos please." The human bartender poured a couple of beers from the tap and slid it over the counter. Dietrich grabbed one mug and gulped down a generous amount. "Ah, this Crincho is a lot better than the swill in our local joint. Our supplier is ripping us off. It's not very cheap to ship goods over to our planet," VES said as he took a modest sip, still a bit uncomfortable. "And it's not like our planet is loaded. We can't afford to spend as much as a Bentheimer." Both of them commiserate for a moment over Cloudy Curtain's pathetic economy. The backwater system lacked a robust industrial base that transformed cheap raw materials into expensive end products. In terms of resources, its asteroid fields only held common junk such as iron ores and ice. The planets also failed to distinguish themselves. In a universe with billions of stars, humanity did not lack basic resources. Any random corporation could hire a bunch of miners and drop them at a random unclaimed star system. No, what most people paid attention to nowadays were exotic resources, something that became scarce as one left the center of the galaxy. The Bright Republic happened to be situated at the very end of a galactic arm. PSSST. Dietrich bumped his elbow into VES as he nodded towards an incoming pair of passengers. "Chick spotted at 3 o'clock. VES raised his eyebrow and wanted to say something like, "So what," but a hand suddenly dragged him from his bar stool. The two young men quickly approached the pair of girls. Though dressed informally, the pair of women looked resplendent. The pair of raven-haired goddesses resembled each other so much they must be sisters. The taller one was sportier and not afraid to show her abs with her exposed midriff. The shorter one dressed more conservatively but had a cavia body. Both of them stopped their conversation and regarded the approaching hunters. "Hey there, beautiful ladies, what brings you here to this fine vessel?" The girls both giggled behind their raised hands. The elder sister took the lead. "Oh, you know, worried parents wanting to send us to somewhere safe." Dietrich continued to put the moves on the elder sister, obviously leaving the younger one to VES. Gulping a little, he said, "Hey. What's your name?" "Rose." "Rose Allemeyer. What is it you do in life?" "I'm in my last year of finishing my degree in terran ecology." "And you?" "I'm an independent mech designer. I just started my business a few months ago and managed to achieve a couple of sales." VES boasted a little about his accomplishments, but Rose's eyes slowly glazed over. Sensing the disinterest, he changed topics. He struggled to catch Rose's interests but couldn't judge if he succeeded. Meanwhile, Dietrich and the older sister named Piper got along swimmingly. He even put his hand around her hips and drew her closer. He wished he had brought Lucky along instead of letting him laze about back in the cabin. As VES conducted a halting conversation with the demure Rose, not making a lot of headway into learning more about the girl. "It's been fun, but we gotta go back to our parents," Piper said as she bumped her comm against Dietrich's wrist, exchanging contacts. "See you around." As the two women left, Dietrich stared at VES while scratching his head. "Man, seeing the two of you stumble around makes me embarrassed to say you're my friend. Did you grow up in a cave or something?" "I spent most of my energy on my career. I couldn't afford to get distracted by girls." The little boss gazed at VES as if he was an alien. "Man, that sounds sad. You should get out more. This is the best time of our lives. Don't wait until you grow wrinkles before you start entering the dating scene. It's far too late by then." He blathered on about the art of picking up girls. The men talked with gusto, attracting a couple of other same-minded men who shouted liberal amounts of advice. It turned into a small show where they all attempted to teach the nerd how to get along with the opposite sex. VES only half listened to everyone's drunken words as he focused more on how he should spend his steadily accumulating design points. With the infamy of his model driving his sales, he could afford to round out his foundations. Forget about getting in bed with girls, he'd rather jump into a pool of DP. "Heavens, you're pretty much hopeless." "Never mind," Dietrich concluded as he threw down his empty mug. "Let's go explore the shops. I'm itching to see what fancy things are available here. There might even be some goods that can only be found in the Friday Coalition." The boulevards lining the main passageways offered high-end products at even higher prices. Every store quoted their prices in Coalition credits, or calls for short. One clothing store charged 50,000 calls for a single men's outfit, while an ice cream store offered deluxe flavors at 1,000 calls per scoop. "What's the exchange rate?" VES opened his comm and programmed the device to automatically convert every call price in his sites. An overlay inside his eyes unobtrusively added the prices in bright credits. He swore a bit at the ridiculous rate. "It's almost 100 to 1. Just add 2 zeros to every call price you see." That meant that men's outfit cost 5 million bright credits. To put it into perspective, VES could build a quarter of a mech with that much money. These guys are fucking extravagant. It puts the money we paid for passage to shame. I have a feeling the space line never intended to earn a profit from ticket prices in the first place. This is practically a floating city in space. The passengers here are paying to experience life in the Coalition. If the torch of the Vanguard was a microcosm of the Coalition, then that meant their total wealth placed them in the lower middle class in terms of affluence. In other words, they were nobodies. With this much money being spent on luxuries, it's a wonder why those second-rate states haven't cleaned up all the third-rate states in the vicinity. It's not worth it. The money needed to maintain their standard of living is unsustainable when compared to the amount of wealth they are able to generate from our poorer territories. That was the simple explanation. VES had no doubt other concerns held back these second-rate behemoths. Still, the words he said still rang true. Without sufficient exotic resources, the second-rate states had no reason to expand their territories. It was like annexing a trash heap. It stank and ruined their views. The high prices ruined their mood for window shopping. They separated from each other as VES wanted to return to his cabin. With his safety guaranteed to an extent, Dietrich was free to explore the underbelly of the ship where various kinds of blood sports and duels were held. Have fun down there, and don't get pulled into any bets. I still need you to accompany to Limar and back, you know. Sure, I'll be fine, Mom. Dietrich rolled his eyes. You've got my comm, so holler at me if you need some muscle. I'm sure the ship's security can handle most incidents. Though the chances aren't big, I'm more concerned about pirates and other raids. If you haven't noticed, the local star sector seems to be growing more unsettled. Having followed the news, VES learned the incident in Bentheim was not an isolated event. Various other third-rate states suffered from similar unsettling incidents. One planet had its fuel refinery explode, causing massive damage along with an excruciating loss of life. What VES found peculiar was that the groups that executed these terror attacks all looked different. The group that struck Bentheim agitated against the corrupt galactic corporations that supposedly puppet the Bright Republic from the shadows. As for another terror group in another state, they fought for the rights of exploited miners. If anyone believes these guys are not related to each other, then I'll eat my comm. He stopped wasting time on catching up with the news and turned to the MTA instead. As an organization that dealt with all things mechs, it offered plenty of services to mech designers. VES had already dealt with certification. Now he planned to access their open library. It's already generous for Director Chandler to give me a couple of books for free. He taught me there's still much to learn about the universe from books. Naturally, knowledge taught by an able teacher could not replace rote memorization. The books available in the open library also had its limits. As VES logged in the MTA's virtual library section, he had access to many books. However, he already saw that most focused on the fundamentals and core knowledge. Cutting-edge proprietary knowledge was wholly absent from the library. Luckily, I don't have to rely on others to develop my specializations. The basics are good enough for me. Referencing the library will also create a paper trail for me to explain my sudden improvements in mechanics and other skills. As he recently improved his mechanics skill to journeyman, he wanted to stabilize his newly achieved realm by reading supplementary books. He filtered out most books concerning other topics and only limited himself to the best-selling primers at journeyman level. Artificial Musculature, How to Go Faster, by Master Ricardo Takanada. Price, 153,623 bright credits. The Forces Propelling Bipedal Mechs, A Balanced Approach, by Master R.I. Ulmer and Master F.M. Smith. Price, 346,535 bright credits. The Journeyman's Guide to Mech Engines, 74th edition, by Master Elia James, Master Alice Coventry and Master Christopher Lynn. Price, 86,232 bright credits. VES practically bled out his heart when he spent his precious credits on those books. Most of the masters who authored or edited those books were renowned mech designers sitting at the top of the mech industry. The 3 books VES selected formed the core of journeyman-level mechanics, and even with his system-enhanced memories, he could still learn a lot from those books. The prices were originally expressed in different currencies. Perhaps to those who lived in second-rate states, the prices were reasonable. But for he was certain the purchases would eventually pay off when he assimilated the knowledge, but it still represented a large chunk of his savings. It feels like I'm back in college. Well, as long as the ship is still in transit, I have more than enough time to digest these books. Just as he was about to dive into his purchases, the front door of the cabin slid open. Vesey boy. You gotta come downstairs. There's a pair of next-gen mechs about to duel each other in an hour. Gather up your credits and let's go bet. Chapter 73, underway. The designers of the Torch of the Vanguard shaped it in a lengthy, triangular form. It looked like a stubby rod where the top was narrow in order to provide windows to every cabin and fat at the bottom to store lots of cargo. Thus, the underbelly of the ship had enough room to set up a small arena, shielded by the best screening technology the Friday Coalition could afford. A large crowd already gathered around the high-tech stadium. Even for the Friday Coalition, seeing a next-gen mech perform was not an everyday sight. Only the elites from second-rate states were privileged to pilot such an expensive and powerful mech. Naturally, the first-rate superstates treated next-gen mechs as their basic models. The cutting-edge generation that they were still developing would be unleashed to the wider galaxy in about a decade. VES was already apprehensive about the sea of changes that ensued with every generational leap. Hey VES, can you explain to me what's so fancy about the next generation? Each new generation represented a major leap forward in a couple of areas of technology. Usually the incorporation of hitherto unknown exotic materials supported such innovation. I don't have the details, but I've heard the next generation is largely an advance in weapons and energy storage technology. Lasers and other types of direct energy weapons are more powerful and can deliver a higher burst of damage without damaging their weapons. High-end energy cells are also able to store more power. As for heat management, the improvement there hasn't caught up, so mechs running energy weapons won't last as long. Okay, so lasers are gonna hit harder and longer, but the heat management is going to be a bitch. Sounds like it's ideal for skirmisher types. What about ballistic and missile weaponry? There's no major innovation there, but weapons manufacturers have reduced the costs of much of their premium weaponry. It basically means that the other weapon types can catch up at the cost of reduced profits to manufacturers. Heh, sounds good. Those greedy bastards charge way too much for ammunition. It's about time they get to bleed. VES did not mention that armor systems also failed to keep up. That largely meant that battles between next-gen mechs were shorter and more intense. The risk of death increased while the amount of repairs and replenishments was going up. The strategic use of mechs was about to change in many ways. They sat around the arena and waited for the show to start. It did not take too long for the stars to arrive. That's Wolf Greer of the Constellations. His Moonhall mech once smashed 3 pirates at once with his overload fist. A bulky medium mech carrying twin pistols on its hips arrived first. Despite the pistols, the mech was built like a brawler, its main weapon being its reinforced fists. The pilot had guts for resorting to unarmed combat. The shorter range meant the mech had less reach and, more importantly, less leverage to punch through armor. What's the overload fist? Don't know. We'll see it in action soon enough. As VES admired the Moonhall's refined lines, its opponent came onto the stage as well. The other mech weighed a little lighter than the Moonhull. The large logo on its arm told the audience that the mech named Righteous Sword fought under the banner of the Winston Corps. That's Iris Peterson's famous Righteous Sword, one of the best sword mechs of the coalition. The two next-gen mechs met each other in the middle of the arena. After a short handshake, they parted and stood at the standard dueling distance for small-sized arenas. The small setting gave the Righteous Sword a lot less room to run around. As a mech armed with nothing but a single sword, Iris needed all the room she could get in order to leverage her mech's superior mobility. Now that the duelists made themselves known, the crowd started to make their bets. When VES heard the amount of money they chipped in, he thought better of putting in his own bet. Like a rural hick, Dietrich dropped his jaw. Heavens, did that guy just bet the equivalent of 200 million bright credits? He could feed an entire planet for a day with that much money. As soon as the bets tapered off, the organizers strengthened the security screens and greenlighted the duel. Start. The next-gen mechs exploded into action. As each next-gen mech represented the pinnacle of mechs from the Friday Coalition, VES was ready to study how far they pushed the envelope. The spectacle didn't disappoint. The forces the mechs were able to leverage caused the mechs to move with speed and power that put older mechs to shame. The Moonhull especially embodied this as it sought to charge straight at the Righteous Sword. The battle embodied the classic match between a brute and a mover. The Moonhull excelled in straightforward fights and trading hits, while the Radiant Sword sought to attack weak points and avoid getting entangled. In normal circumstances, Iris should have been able to leverage her advantage in mobility, but Wolf made good use of the cramped arena to slow her down. Enough of this. Wolf broadcasted as his mech engaged a set of hidden boosters. Damn, that guy's timing is impeccable. There's no way for Iris to escape. The Righteous Sword was in the middle of fleeing to the side. Its momentum could not be redirected instantly. By the time it turned, the Moonhull was already upon the slimmer mech. As if knowing that any further evasions had no use, the Righteous Sword extended its sword. The Moonhull shifted its orientation and position slightly by adjusting the power of its individual boosters at the very last moment. This caused the sword to punch through the side armor and miss the power reactor. On the other hand, the Munhal's fists glowed red as some sort of strange energy enveloped the limb. Just as it was about to strike the righteous sword's cockpit, both mechs abruptly stopped. That's enough. The winner is Wolf Greer. Most of the crowd booed at the premature end of the duel. Even if the fist had hit, the damage it dealt might not cripple the righteous sword. VES understood why the organizers shut down the fight so quickly. Repairing next-gen mechs was expensive and they did not want to weaken the power of their best escorts. Dietrich shook his head, having bet quite a lot of credits on the beautiful female pilot. Man, this arena is a waste of time if the organizers keep pulling everyone's punches. They don't have the guts to show us a real fight. I'd be better off watching a projection from the galactic net. The pair split up again once Dietrich escorted VES back to their cabin upstairs. As VES wanted to save as much credits as possible, he declined to follow Dietrich outside as he perused the ship's extensive entertainment. The torch of the Vanguard slowly made its rounds as it hopped across borders. The distance it traversed within a short amount of time was incredible. That it took over 2 weeks to reach Limar was a testament to the torch's incredibly powerful engines. Luckily, the Limar system happened to be situated a little closer to the Bright Republic, so VES could board any standard passenger ship to reach Limar in time for the qualifiers. The ship's prestige and its escort of elite mechs from the Coalition deterred all troublemakers. Most of them took one look at the scanners and got scared off by the torch's immense engine readings. Only the largest organizations from second-rate states possessed the know-how to build such a powerful ship. VES made good use of the time by studying the virtual books as if he was a desperate student about to take his exams. He already learned much of the core knowledge from the system, but the books expanded upon the main concepts and provided him with a lot of good references. At the end of the Torch's voyage to the Coalition's border, VES firmly stabilized his foundations in mechanics. He now possessed sufficient confidence in designing a mech with mechanical principles beyond the reach of an average novice. Mechanics might not be as sexy as metallurgy or optics, but it's the main pillar that underpins every mech. Perhaps he might still be behind the best geniuses participating in the open competition, but he should be able to pass the qualifiers at the very least. He had taken a brief look at the rules and understood the days preceding the main competition was meant to filter out the riffraff. Too bad the hype around my mechs have faded. His virtual sales tapered off. The Mark Antony and its male variant proved to be surprisingly successful while they graced the news, but the novelty passed when the broadcasters focused on other events. Without the constant exposure in the media, the mech dropped into obscurity. What further nailed the coffin into his sales was that a couple of other designers copied his codpiece. It proved to be a minor trend in the local market, but so many pilots repelled the myriad designs that the copycats never earned much of a profit. VES studied the figures and nodded in disappointment. There's no future in driving sales through unique looks. Excessively decorated mechs don't fare well in the market right now. The current trend is to keep the mech's appearance sober in order to avoid attracting enemy fire. It might be a different story if the mechs were rated lower. First and second star mechs often featured brighter colors and more flamboyant touches. However, by the time pilots were able to buy 5-star mechs, they were old enough to graduate from academies and pilot a mech on a real battlefield. At the last day when VES was about to depart the Torch, he decided to spend his accumulated DP. He already spent a lot of time sorting out his recent gains, so that left his mind free to accept an influx of new knowledge. Now what will I upgrade? Chapter 74, Another Upgrade. As VES glanced at his status, he almost got scared by the amount of DP he accrued. Just a short time ago he still got excited when he earned a couple of hundred DP, but right now his breath caught when he saw he earned more than 5,000 DP just from his virtual sales. Damn, earning so much DP is a cheat. If even one of my design catches on, I'm set for life. Naturally, VES did not think the system was generous. The way it handed out DP told him that it encouraged VES to develop one good design rather than 100 forgettable designs. The DP earnings from sales should be his primary source of income. And though he could earn a lot of DP from simply getting one design right, the costs of more advanced skills from the skill tree ramped up pretty fast. He switched to his skill tree and stared down his mechanics section. Upgrading his mechanics skill from journeyman to senior demanded 100,000 DP. Even if he gathered so much DP, he also had to satisfy the additional prerequisite of raising 3 related sub-skills to journeyman as well. It's not worth it to go down a single tree if I only have 5,000 DP to spend. I'm better off increasing my attributes or some of my other skills. With this much DP, it became possible for him to buy a couple of candies from the store in order to boost his intelligence. Still, just because it was possible didn't mean it was useful. If he wanted to compete against the geniuses who studied at Limar, then he needed an immediate boost in skills and knowledge. I'll think about attributes later when the situation is not so urgent. First up, let's see what main skill I can upgrade. Though he could afford to upgrade 2 main skills, he was apprehensive about overloading his brain. Every major category came with a wealth of knowledge that took weeks to settle in. If VES bit off more than he could chew, he might end up mentally crippled for a time. The last thing he wanted was to knock himself out of the competition before it even began. Thus, he started to scour the skill tree for a modest collection of sub-skills first. After taking a brief look at some of the newer and more exotic sub-skills, he turned down most of them in favor of upgrading his existing ones. Alloy Compression I, 1000 DP. Speed Tuning 3, 800 DP. Medium Weight Armor Optimization 3, 1200 DP. Metallurgy, Journeyman, 2000 DP. The upgrades to speed tuning and medium weight armor optimization spoke for themselves. They increased the depth of his specializations and would help him make faster and better protected mechs. As for metallurgy, he decided that achieving journeyman level in this field was essential if he wanted to compete in terms of armor. He still remembered the extraordinary toughness of some of mechs that participated in the Fusion Cup. A solid background in metallurgy helped close the gap and enable him to purchase another sub-skill. So that's how they did it. VES muttered when he finally added alloy compression to his shopping list. Though not the only way to improve a piece of armor plating, it nonetheless provided remarkable results with comparatively little effort. The concept sounded simple. Certain alloys transformed when subjected to a large amount of even pressure. While most either ruptured or ended up as a piece of scrap, some alloys instead successfully compressed into a tougher plate. Too bad it requires a special machine in order to compress these special alloys. VES sighed. Just buying the cheapest model set him back at least a couple of 100 million bright credits. Though still outside his budget, he could still apply the knowledge to any designs as long as he did not intend to produce it in his workshop. Not only was it usable at the upcoming competition, he could also apply it to any virtual designs where the game provided him with every possible fabrication machine he could ask. Thus, the extravagant purchase of 1000 DP for just the first rank of alloy compression still paid off. As VES intended to absorb a lot of knowledge at a time, he spaced them out. He first started with Speed Tuning 3 and Medium Weight Armor Optimization 3. Both of these sub-skills at the third tier provided similar kinds of knowledge in that they were light on fundamentals but heavy on details. While absorbing the data from speed tuning happened without problems, VES could not say the same for armor optimization. His shallow background in physics increased the difficulty of absorbing the advanced data. He got the feeling he received a large bunch of encrypted gibberish, and the only way to unlock them was to increase his proficiency in physics. That's a thing for later when I have the DP to spare. Having learned a lesson on the importance of main skills, he opted to absorb metallurgy first. Ugh. The influx burdened his mind, but not as bad as the first time he upgraded a skill to journeyman. Somehow, VES found that his mind had expanded somewhat, as if his previous experience left a hollow that could be recycled over and over again. With the help of this boon, VES focused on absorbing everything about metallurgy and its varied fields of knowledge. Journeyman-level metallurgy mostly consisted of learning the properties and uses of the most commonly employed exotic minerals. It provided him with an extensive understanding in how to use and shape armor plating and gave him a primer on how others developed their own armor systems. As for alloy compression, the sub-skill went into greater detail in how most armor systems improved their specs without getting too heavy. With the right mix of exotic materials, the compressed piece of armor was capable of withstanding much more damage for its weight and thickness. The trade-off for this procedure was that it took a lot of time to process the materials and that a lot of expensive exotics had to be used. It turned out the original Caesar Augustus model employed compressed armor plating to achieve its lauded durability. National Aeromotive spent a lot of effort in developing their heat-resistant armor, so VES was a long way in developing armor that performed anywhere near such a great product. At least he possessed enough of a foundation to handle a compression machine skillfully and reproduce any advanced piece of armor so long as he had the license. Mechanics, Journeyman, Jury Rigging 2, Speed Tuning 3. Metallurgy, Journeyman, Alloy Compression I. Physics, Novice, Lightweight Armor Optimization I, Medium Weight Armor Optimization 3. Evaluation, a novice about to spread his wings. While he lost a lot of DP, his capabilities improved beyond the norm. VES vaguely suspected that he had surpassed a regular mech designer who had just graduated from a second-rate institution. As for matching the skills of a genuine elite like Edwin McKinney, VES still lacked the confidence for a rematch. Perhaps I've gotten within striking distance to Edwin, but that doesn't mean anything yet. He's bound to develop his skills as well. I can't imagine how far he's already reached. Life went on. While VES sorted out his overstuffed mind, the torch of the Vanguard entered Coalition space. She finally reached the end of her journey. The Friday Coalition's immense size meant it held multiple port systems. From the Bright Republic, any ship wishing to enter Coalition space first passed through the Hostin system. As a strategically important location and a prime invasion point, the Coalition forces in charge of this area built it up as a fortress. Countless mechs and fixed emplacements dotted the system even as the torch of the Vanguard exited FTL at the edge. A patrol of spacefaring mechs arrived at the ship and called her to a halt. Despite the massive traffic coming to and from the Hostin system, the Coalition still possessed enough manpower to inspect each ship. As a vessel registered in Coalition space, the inspectors went about their work with haste. Dietrich stood beside VES as they both got checked out by the incoming personnel. Though Dietrich's status was a little dubious, the identity of a proven mech designer proved enough for VES to vouch for his companion. Man, these Coalition guys sure take visitors seriously. I think the recent terrorist attacks have them spooked as well, even if they haven't suffered yet from any attacks. All of the Coalition troops bore a distinct symbol underneath their Coalition sunflower logo. It looked like a set of 5 tapering blue triangles, like a fan consisting of 5 blades. We've entered the territory of the Kansa clan. They're rather strict and uptight, so don't pull anything funny. Yeah, I know. I've seen enough Coalition broadcasts to know how pissed off they get when someone has their hair out of place. That was an exaggeration, of course, but it demonstrated the Kansa clan's values. As a rigid family clan that never bent their principles, they clashed often against their rival clans in the state they originated. Eventually they pissed off so many groups that they all banded together against the Kansa clan, devastating their worlds and forcing their upper echelon to flee to the distant Komodo Star sector. One would think that the Kansa clan loosened up after such a harrowing ordeal. Instead, they doubled down, coming across as even more stubborn and uptight. Only their might as the second most powerful military power of the Coalition kept them safe from outside pressure. No one wanted to provoke the dragon. Luckily, the Lemar system is part of the more liberal Carnegie Group. VES said as the inspectors finished their work. They caught a couple of suspicious characters and escorted them out of the ship. We only have to tough it out for a few days before we leave Kansa space. The torch finally reached her final stop at a massive spaceport orbiting one of the system's moons. No outsiders were allowed to approach the Kansa clan's settled planets, so the station handled most of the traffic. The insides of the station embodied the quiet arrogance of the clan. Occasional trees and sculptures brought in some much-needed vitality in the otherwise sober white decor. After leaving the torch, they transferred to a smaller and cheaper passenger transport. There was no helping taking the cheaper option this time. Paying everything in calls ate up a large amount of their money. VES and Dietrich could only afford to pay for the cheapest option, which let Dietrich bring his mech along. I think with the recent trouble, this trip might not be very quiet. The Coalition is powerful, but that just means that there are more interests competing against each other. Dietrich nodded seriously, his customary grin already gone from his face. I know. I've prepared as best I can. The St. Hurst lacked the various luxuries offered by much larger vessels such as the Torch of the Vanguard. Instead, she focused on maximizing her internal space, trying to stuff as many passengers as possible in a single ship while still adhering to the Coalition's laws. That meant their cabin was simply 2 bunks, a desk, some chairs, and a tiny bathroom. While it sufficed for a simple trip to Lemar, the contrast between the royal treatment they received from their previous ship was too much. While the St. Hurst devoted only a small portion of her interior to shops and restaurants, VES and Dietrich found that most of them were on the more affordable side. VES bought a couple of fancier-looking clothes that allowed him to fit in a little better, while Dietrich happily tried out all the cheap drinks the coalition offered. The one good thing about the St. Hurst was that she didn't lose out on speed. Her modern FTL drive possessed quite a reach and hopped over many light years with each transition. As they entered deeper into the Kansa clan's territory, they started to encounter more populated systems. The St. Hurst stumbled upon an invasion after a couple of days. VES and Dietrich's luck in avoiding incidents failed spectacularly at the worst possible moment. A group daring enough to openly assault a system under the rule of the Kansa clan could not be anything but a rival coalition member. Chapter 75, Pirates. The worst outcome happened just as they finally reached Limar. An unknown group of invaders brazenly attacked a border system owned by the powerful Kansa clan. The St. Hurst immediately locked down the ship and turned off all external communications, but plenty of passengers possessed different means. They're not going to attack us, are they? I recognize the emblem. That's the Vermeer group. That's not a raid, that's a full invasion fleet. They even brought tanks and infantry to occupy captured territory. The news became grim when they realized the St. Hurst got caught in a struggle between two full coalition partners. The third most powerful Vermeer group committed to a full border invasion of the Twin Tigers system held by the second most powerful Kansa clan. Fuck, I always thought these things happened in dramas. Now that it's happening in real life, I feel really crappy. Dietrich spat as his face turned blue. Through long-range scans everyone could see hundreds of regimented mechs moving in unison. Any casual mercenary group would get rolled over when facing such an unstoppable tide. The galaxy is never at peace. We've been too spoiled in the Bright Republic where skirmishes remain small. After all, there's nothing really valuable there worth fighting to the death. That the Vermeer group decided to invest so much effort into conquering a border system meant that this place had something of value. A couple of other passengers had the same idea, and one person who still had access to the galactic net found the reason. Spiral ore. The Twin Tigers system has a large deposit of spiral ore. While that meant nothing to Dietrich, VES looked up with widened eyes as he heard the news. His improved metallurgy skills along with his extensive insight in the mech industry supplied him with the reason for the Vermeer group's radical move. Spiral ore can be refined into a substance that is essential to fabricating high-density energy cells. Trace amounts of spiral ore can be found in most star systems, but it's not economical to harvest these tiny deposits. If the Kansa clan discovered a substantial deposit in the Twin Tigers system, then it has turned from a backwater in a major strategic asset. A couple of passengers dug out even worse news. It turned out that the Vermeer group already possessed two large deposits of spiral ore within their territory. They sought to conquer the Twin Tigers system in order to obtain a local monopoly on the valuable ore. If they succeeded in keeping all three sources of ore, then they were able to dictate the prices and make up for the losses they suffered in this invasion. Looks like the unrest outside has spread to the coalition as well. These coalition partners sure are ruthless enough to wage war on their own side. In actuality, it was questionable whether the major partners that made up the coalition were ever on the same side to begin with. They came together only to defend against the monolithic hexadric hegemony. Besides passing some common laws to ease trade and mutual defense, the different partners still held on to their unique cultures and individual pride. As time passed, the St. Hurst tightened their suppression in order to avoid panic. Crew members along with armed bots emerged from nowhere and guided the passengers back to their cabins. A shipwide announcement spoke once the last passengers returned to their places. This is the captain speaking. As you may have found out, the St. Hurst has entered the Twin Tigers system in the middle of a military conflict. While devastating to the population, our spaceline is not related to either factions involved in any way. Neither sides have expressed any intentions of pursuing us as we announced our presence. Just as VES was about to sigh in relief, the captain spoke again. Do not misunderstand. We are not safe. Though we may be neutral, either the Kansa or the Vermeer can change their minds at any moment. If you are a person of means and have reason to believe you can convince them to leave us alone, then feel free to approach a crew member. Nonetheless, I don't expect them to spare any thoughts on us. What we may be facing is worse. Dietrich looked grim as he analyzed a projection of the star system. When the big boys fight, there's always little boys scurrying underneath. We have detected sporadic signs of unaffiliated parties. Though most of them are civilian vessels suffering under the same circumstances, there are a number of vessels that may not hold friendly intentions. In other words, pirates. The captain prattled on about the importance of staying put and avoid any panic. Both VES and Dietrich learned nothing new from the speech. Instead, they waited for a key phrase to emerge. Furthermore, to any active mech pilots among you, we may request assistance from you, especially if you have brought along your mech. We are unsealing all mechs in our cargo bay at this moment. VES looked at Dietrich, who nodded and started to change from his casual wear into his pilot suit. Your Harrier won't keep up with the kind of mechs out there. Even the pirates are better equipped than the mech corps back home. Even in the same generation, there's differences in firepower and protection. I know, but I'm not one to run from a challenge. I've spent weeks doing nothing but drinking my time away. You hired me to protect you, so it's time for me to earn my pay. In actuality, VES did not agree to pay Dietrich anything. He tagged along on his own accord, but neither of the two were in the mood to bring that up. As Dietrich finished changing his clothes, he opened the front door of the cabin and spoke to a nearby crew member. The uniformed spacer nodded and let a spare bot guide Dietrich to the cargo bay at the lower decks. In times like these, VES hated he could not join the fight. Though he received basic training in firearms back when he studied mech design, that was only to prepare him as a reservist. Even if the government drafted him into the mech corps, all he could really do was repair and maintain mechs. Fighting the enemy at the front lines was not what VES ever had in mind. To calm himself down, he grabbed an oblivious Lucky and changed to a vacuum suit before sitting down on a reinforced chair. Each cabin came supplied with basic sealed vacuum suits and reinforced chairs with sturdy straps in case of emergencies. VES strapped himself in and made sure any sudden shocks from the ship did not dislodge his bindings. Don't move, Lucky. I don't want you to float around in case the artificial gravity shuts off. Space combat among humans used to be bloody before the MTA stamped down their foot. Nowadays, spaceships weren't supposed to be armed, which cut down on the damage. These days, pirates employed space-capable mechs to secure the surroundings while using boarding troops to invade the interior of a ship. If the St. Hurst wanted to survive the pirate raid intact, then it could not afford to lose either battles. The minutes ticked past as VES felt his skin grow clammy with sweat. The worst thing about the situation was that the crew did not intend to inform the passengers of any news. Dietrich might have already launched from the cargo bay. Could he manage to fight in the difficult environment of outer space? Was his mech sealed tight enough to avoid leaking the air supply? No sound propagated from space. Any explosions or weapons fire would not affect the ship unless it happened extremely close. Though VES vaguely sensed a couple of unusual vibrations, he could not guess their source. Even with the might of the system, VES still had nothing in his hands to defend against any aggression. He regretted ignoring the self-defense options in the store and skill tree. If he invested some of the 5,000 DP into personal defense, then he might not be sweating bullets right now. The ship shook abruptly several times. The captain quickly made another announcement. Alert. The pirates have managed to slip in a couple of boarding shuttles through our mechs. They are drilling through the hatches as we speak. Do not resist and do not leave your cabins. VES swore vigorously. This useless captain could have explained what was going on. Who were the pirates? Did they have a track record of wanting murder, or were they just here to rob the passengers of their wealth? Shit. I still have more than 24 million credits in savings. I can't afford to lose it all. Still, what could he do? He did not delude himself into thinking he could slip out of his cabin and murder every intruder with his bare hands. He did not even possess a firearm. He quickly activated the mech designer system and opened the store. Basic fruit knife, 100 DP. One-shot holdout pistol, 500 DP. What? 500 fricking DP for a gun with a single bullet. VES wanted to tear his hair off. Forget about the pistol, he couldn't even afford to buy the most harmless knife from the store due to his shortage of DP. He made a major error in blowing all of his DP away at once. Well, lesson learned. Next time, I'll save some DP. As VES sat still holding onto his gem cat, he felt a couple of more vibrations. While he had trouble guessing the origin of those vibrations, they increased in magnitude and frequency. If he didn't know any better, they felt a lot like heavy footsteps. With the cabin's heavy sound insulation, he had no way of knowing any better. Minutes passed as the frequency of vibrations decreased. Just as VES relaxed his nerves, a breaching device broke the cabin door. Hands in the air. Don't move. I'm unarmed, I'm unarmed. VES yelled as he raised his arms. Lucky yowled in fright as soon as two menacing exoskeleton suits entered the tiny cabin. The haphazard depictions of weapons and scantily clad girls made it clear that these two men were not part of the ship's security contingent. The two armored men practically took up half of the cabin's space. One of the pirates held a massive laser rifle over his shoulder while the second held a smoking laser pistol. You. What's your name? VES. VES Larkinson. The lead pirate paused for a moment. VES guessed he was using his suit's internal HUD to look up his name from the passenger manifest. Mech designer. Good. Your roommate is fighting outside. Not so good. Come with us. Wait, I can pay. I have credits. We're not interested in your worthless credits. Come along before your friend does something regrettable. The lead pirate revealed a knife and cut off the straps holding VES in place. Stand up. With one pirate looming over with a rifle and another pointing at him with a thick and deadly knife, VES had no choice. He kept his hands in the air and slowly pushed off the chair. I don't want to get hurt. I'll do what you want. Just don't hurt me. Relax, pal. Just listen to what I say, and you can dash. The pirate suddenly got cut off as a golden flash swiped over his neck. A soft swish fluttered in the air as everyone got startled. The flash turned out to be Lucky, who landed atop a dresser with glowing blue eyes. A pair of energy claws extended from his dainty claws. The drops of blood that still clung onto its surface sizzled as the heat evaporated the remaining liquid. The front pirate gurgled for a few seconds before collapsing into a heap. His exoskeleton armor provided almost no resistance to Lucky's sudden strike. What the? Freddy. You fucking cat. The remaining pirate went berserk and pulled the trigger of his rifle. A white-hot beam emerged from its muzzle and vaporized Dietrich's bed before turning towards the top of the dresser. Lucky. Run. The gem cat's eyes sparkled even brighter before he disappeared in another flash. A fraction of a second later, Lucky landed in front of the broken cabin door as the second pirate suffered from an identical case of having half his neck slashed apart by a deceptively sharp claw. The floor boomed as the dead man collapsed onto his brother. While Lucky deactivated his deadly claw and preened, VES grew green as he stared at the expanding puddles of blood. His lunch suddenly escaped from his stomach. He barfed right into his transparent helmet cover. His airtight suit automatically detected the danger and subtracted the front plate. After emptying his stomach, he breathed deeply and stared at Lucky as if he was a ghost. Lucky, your claws. Since when did you? VES suddenly recalled the mysterious box. Did its contents have anything to do with Lucky being able to manifest his energy claws? Chapter 76, Killer. VES had never seen so much blood in his entire life. It pooled into a couple of puddles as deep as the carnelian he installed on his first mech. The two bodies of the armored pirates laid still in an undignified heap, as pathetic as the manner in which they died. Meow. Lucky released as he retracted his claws and gently brushed his body against his owner's legs. It was as if the last minute simply didn't happen. Okay. So my pet is a killer assassin. Okay. That's too much crazy for me to process. If Dietrich could see him now, he'd probably slap his back and tell him to man up. The pirates were out to get him and the only way he could stay free was to rob them of their lives. Over many weeks of interaction with the confident pilot, some of it must have rubbed on VES, because he recovered after only a couple of minutes. I'm pathetic. This is life in the age of mechs. I design and produce massive machines of war, goddammit. I already have a lot more blood on my hands. After all, did he not sell a mech to Vincent Ricklin, who used it to massacre scores of innocent bystanders? It was not as if VES ignored the consequences. The true impact of his actions were too distant, and he received some training in college to rationalize his actions. Still, coming so close to a death caused by his circumstances made him feel extraordinarily queasy. I've got to snap out of it. The pirates must still be connected to each other. If I'm right, they must have noticed the deaths already. VES snapped back into action. If any other pirates came and saw him dazing around over the bodies of their comrades, they'd shoot him in a heartbeat. He quickly entered the bathroom and rinsed away his vomit. Then he returned to the main cabin and grabbed a fallen laser pistol. TCH. It's locked, but that won't stop me. He went to the half-burned dresser and retrieved a small pack of mini tools from his luggage. As a mech designer, he always ensured he had access to a set of essential tools in case he wanted to tinker on something or needed to conduct some emergency repairs. He did not stop to mess around with the laser pistol but instead left his cabin as quickly as possible. Come on, Lucky. We can't get caught by any pirate right now. The cat dutifully followed VES as they both ran down the corridors. Now that they left the soundproofed cabin, they heard clear footsteps, screams and weapon discharges. It turned out that some of the other passengers had also smuggled in some weapons. Unfortunately for them, anything they sneaked past the ship's sensors failed to scratch the paint of an advanced exoskeleton suit. To be honest, even his pilfered pistol lacked sufficient punch, but he still brought it along. After running down the stairs and entering a random opened cabin, entered the bathroom and shut himself inside. Right. Pistol. Come on and open for me. VES whispered as he opened his miniature toolbox and started to fiddle with the laser pistol's control module. Though he had no background in infantry weapons, his familiarity with their mech-sized counterparts allowed him to identify almost every component underneath the weapon's casing. Alright, so this is the control module. Now how can I disable its identity check? VES had no means of hacking its software. The modern weapon appeared to be an upscale luxury model, so its safety features must be quite substantial. Still, as a compact weapon its manufacturer did not devote too many components into keeping the weapon locked. After a couple of minutes of identifying what each component did, he retrieved a couple of tools and went to work with his utmost focus. His heightened concentration allowed him to shut off his fear and other external influences. His jury-rigging skill allowed him to solve his problem with unconventional solutions. His hands remained as steady as a machine as he delicately cut off some parts while forcibly welding other parts together. After finishing with the locking mechanism, he even started to mess around with the energy cell and capacitor. There. That should do it, he said as he packed up his tools and attached his set to his belt. He gingerly picked up the laser pistol and turned it on. The lights turned green as the weapon started to accumulate a charge. His hasty tinkering succeeded in unlocking the weapon. After pressing a button, a projection came into view over the rear of the barrel. The simple figures displayed the pistol's charge and heat capacity. Currently, the pistol showed that it was ready to fire a charge of 200% in a single heavy beam. Such a charge went way above the weapon's maximum safety limits. Only his recent tinkering allowed the pistol to go beyond its limits. Well, I doubt the pistol will last an entire day, but at least I stand a better chance of penetrating heavy armor. Such a weapon was exceedingly dangerous. If VES did not aim carefully, the laser beam might burn through a bulkhead and damage the rooms ahead. If any passengers huddled nearby, VES might actually kill someone innocent. He'd be in big trouble if he caused the deaths of anyone other than pirates. It's a risk I have to take. I can't sit still and let the pirates decide over my life. He also wanted to keep Lucky safe. Though the cat mostly acted lazy, he felt a deep connection with what could be his only link to his missing father. Let's go hunt some pirates, he whispered to Lucky, and they both snuck out of the bathroom and peeked outside the corridor. I don't want to take the fight to them, but I won't let myself be cornered either. We have to retake control of the ship. He doubted the still fighting crew members appreciated his involvement, but he did not trust them to have the interests of the passengers in mind. Though the laws obligated them to defend the passengers to the death, he occasionally came across some news articles where the captain and the crew were less than passionate when facing down the barrel of a gun. A pair of heavy footsteps approached his hiding place. VES guessed that they possessed sensors that were capable of detecting heat, so they could follow the traces of footsteps and his lingering body heat. From the lack of haste, they probably did not realize that VES was one of the bastards who killed off a couple of pirates. That was good. You. In that cabin. Get out of there. VES slowly rose and held onto his charged-up pistol. Since exoskeletons possessed all kinds of sensors, he did not bother to hide its substantial heat emissions. Fucker. He's armed. The pirates still remained human. The pair of armored men focused all of their attention to his radiating pistol, ignoring the gem cat sneaking up from behind. As a mechanical pet, Lucky barely released any heat as long as he did not deploy his energy claws. By moving slowly and regularly, he was as inconspicuous as the ship's standard cleaning bots. Just as they directed their aim at him through the bulkhead, VES yelled out, "Lucky. Now." Like a silent killer, Lucky jumped in the air and landed atop the back of the rearmost pirate's neck armor. His claws sank deep inside the plating as if it didn't exist and shredded the vulnerable flesh underneath. As one of the pirates gurgled and died, VES poked out his body from the broken door frame and shot his pistol with haste. His aim drifted a bit to the left, causing him to hit the surviving pirate's shoulder instead of his center mass. Still, the overloaded laser beam managed to convey a lot of heat at a single spot which spoiled the pirate's aim. His rifle barked upwards well over its target's head. Damn it. Lucky, finish him off. VES swore as he jumped back inside the empty cabin. His pistol started to smoke and his confidence evaporated. He waited until the scream cut off before taking a peek again. His eyes gazed at another pair of bodies. This time he processed the act of killing without losing control over his stomach. He managed to approach the rear of the St. Hurst with remarkable haste after his latest killings. The boarding parties mainly concentrated their efforts in controlling a few critical compartments along with subduing the passengers. As most of the passengers still huddled inside their rooms, once VES left the cabin area he encountered a lot less patrols. Huh. I thought so. If these pirates are still fighting with the mechs outside, then that means they can't risk sending out too many boarding shuttles. They sent just enough pirates to subdue the passengers and crew. If they lose a couple of men, then it's no big deal for them as long as they recover their gear. VES did not envy the life of a pirate grunt. Unless they could pilot mechs, they were treated as no better than a slightly smarter combat bot. At least one merit to the use of living bodies was that they could not be hacked. Just because the big shots don't care about their lives doesn't mean they will obediently roll over. VES had very little means in repelling the 100-odd or so pirates aboard the St. Hurst. The cheap passenger liner's security contingent obviously lacked exoskeleton armor as the dead crew members that VES encountered sported nothing heavier than lightly armored suits. He approached the engineering compartment which hosted the ship's engines and the power reactor. A lot more pirates milled just outside the heavily armored hatch. They installed a portable laser driller that was in the process of dismantling the blockade. Once the pirates had access to engineering, the game was up. The pirate engineers could do a lot of things, from cutting off the connection to the bridge to redirecting the St. Hurst's course. As a last resort, they could also threaten the entire ship by blowing up its vulnerable reactor. Lucky. Can you sneak closer and count how many pirates are there? The cat bobbed his cute head and snuck around the corner. A minute passed before he returned. The cat softly scratched a bulkhead with single claw. 24 pirates. Are they all inside an exoskeleton? Okay, so they only have 2 lightly armored engineers. Right. I know what to do now. He instructed Lucky briefly, then got ready to take action. He kept a healthy distance from the pirates in order to avoid tripping their sensors. He approached a hatch and used his tools to fiddle with its control mechanisms. After finishing his work, he packed up his tools and readied his pistol. The long wait caused him to drip and sweat again. He was about to do something very foolhardy. Engineer down. Protect the other one. Shoot down that bot. The 2 pirate squads rose into action as Lucky went to town. While Lucky bounced around and spoiled the aim of the pirates by hiding behind their comrades, VES quickly crept around the corner and aimed his smoking pistol at the drill. The beam melted the laser drill into a pile of slag. He immediately jumped back, but a pair of pirates who ignored the commotion and kept their eyes peeled in his direction shot their own weapons in response. A laser almost hit him before VES rounded the corner. The bulkhead blocked out the beam long enough for VES to get away. The other pirate adjusted his light cannon's aim. Its massive size could only be carried by a powered suit of armor. The pirate pulled the trigger, causing Shell to accelerate towards the intersection where VES briefly fired his weapon. Though VES managed to take a few steps back, the shell exploded into a nova of force. The shockwave pushed him off his feet while a small fragment clipped the side of his torso. Arg! His vacuum suit automatically sealed up the gap and stemmed the flow of blood as best it could. The suit injected him with a small dose of painkillers in order to suppress his agony. Damn it, I got hit. Lucky. Get out of there. VES hobbled away as some of the angry pirates thundered after him. He quickly jumped past the closest hatch and waited. The bot is running away. He did not have to wait for long until ran past. Now that Lucky succeeded in getting away, VES slammed his palm onto the hatch's control console. A heavy slab of metal fell down, shutting him momentarily from the enraged pirates. Don't fuck with a mech designer. VES impulsively spat at the closed hatch as a small group of pirates pounded its surface from the other side. He raised his middle finger and saluted the frustrated gang of criminals. Come on, let's get out of here. They'll be on guard against us now. With his trusty cat in tow, he smartly made himself scarce. While Lucky possessed unimaginable capabilities, VES did not want to risk his life against 2 entire squads of heavily armed pirates. Killing the engineers and disabling the drill was the best he could do for the ship. Hopefully he bought enough time. Part 8 of the series ends here. Thank you for watching and listening. If you find it interesting, please give us a like, a comment and a subscription so that we have the motivation to make the next videos.